for bearing with us with this new process. I'm going to open the hearing of the Harwich Conservation Commission for April 2nd, 2020. I'm first obliged to read a statement to start the meeting. And here's that statement. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Harwich Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Also, a reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by viewing the public access station channel 18, and it will be taped as well. And then secondly, despite our best efforts, we're not able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the Town of Harwich website as soon as we are able to. So with that said, thank you all for attending. I hope everybody is safe and healthy on the commission, with the Conservation Department, and with our audience. And the first item on the agenda is a request for termination of applicability for 12 Aaron's Way, map 60 parcel G7-5, its proposed addition. Do we have a representative for this?
Hi, this is Krista Plant.
Hi, if you want to go forward, please.
Our proposal is just to add a 15 by 15 addition on this right side of the property. There's an existing structure already that's within the buffer zone, and this addition would be in that same buffer zone, still remaining about 73 feet from the bog line. And with that, we would also add some plantings, as I understand that there's some need for 2-to-1 mitigation, and we'd be willing to work with the commission or a representative from conservation as to what would be appropriate for that property. And just a side note here, we are looking to purchase the property. We're not the current owners. So we'd be hoping to purchase the property within the next 3 weeks.
All right, thank you. Amy, any comments for us on this project?
Yes, I've worked with the applicant and the current owner on this, and as she stated, made her aware of the 2-to-1 mitigation requirement. Sorry, I'm having a hard time listening at the same time as talking because I'm hearing myself. The resource area here is a cranberry bog, active cranberry bog. The new addition is of 73 feet away from the wetland, and the wetland is the ditch. The addition would be in a currently open area. Now, there was a wooden retaining wall, but not on a site plan that was done in 2006, and that is to kind of hold the slope back. My guess is it was for the purpose of the cranberry operation of the bog, to hold the slope back so that they could keep access around the road. So it would have been an exempted activity under the ag exemption to create that wall. Needless to say, I think we would have approved it even if it did come in front of us. So in my opinion, active cranberry bogs, while they are regulatory wetlands, they're not as necessarily valuable as a wetland resource area, say as such a freshwater marsh, border vegetated wetland, et cetera. I think I would recommend a -3 determination to approve it, with the change in location of mitigation plantings, which would be above the wall, not below it as it shows in your plan, because the cranberry grower, because this is still an active bog, expressed that if plantings were done below the wall, it would inhibit some access. And I'd be happy to work with the new owners on the applicable species and size and planting area.
Okay, thank you, Amy. We've got a real busy agenda, so I think we're gonna have to try to find a way to become efficient with our comments. And so I think I'll start with just who I see first in line, and that would be Stan. And so I'll just ask if there are any comments among the commission members, and I'll just go right down the line as I see them. So Stan, you're up. Any comments on this project?
No comment. The only thing, when I went out to the site, I didn't see where it was staked out or anything for the addition, but so it was on that right corner of the house. So look at what I saw. I didn't have any problem.
All right, thanks, Stan. Ernie, you're up next. Ernie, are you on? Ernie might not be here today. Okay, moving on to Mark.
I see no reason to hold it up.
Thank you, Mark. Carolyn?
I see no reason to hold it up. We usually have a formal plan of the plantings, which we don't have here, but if Amy's okay with working with the applicant, that's fine with me.
Thank you, Carolyn. John, any comments?
Just when I went out to look at the site, I didn't see really a retaining wall. There's a lawn area, and then there seems to be some landscaping timbers, and then below the landscaping timbers, it slopes off pretty steeply toward the flat area by the bog. So is that slope, Amy, where you're saying plantings should happen?
It would be right above the wall.
So in the existing lawn area is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, I don't have any other questions or comments.
Thanks, John. Jim, any comments?
Hey, Brad, yeah,
Oh,
Brad, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm still struggling to get used to this mic on this thing. The biggest comment I had was the photographs and show a deck along the back of the house. That deck's not included on the plans. Amy, do you know if that was permitted or not?
I would have to check on that. We basically had a foundation plan for the house. It wasn't very detailed.
Yeah, because obviously that's within the resource area.
Sorry. So when we change the volume, it affects everybody? I change it to try to make it so you don't have the echo.
I'm controlling mine, so don't worry about me.
But doesn't the echo kind of screw you up a little bit? Yeah, all right.
Sorry.
Ernie, were you
So did you
satisfied?
get that question, Brad?
I thought Amy was going to answer.
Brad, my
Go ahead, Ernie.
yeah, I mean, my comment was that deck is within our resource area, and I'd like to know whether or not it was permitted or not.
I don't know that information off the top of my head. The plan that we were provided was really just a bare bones kind of foundation plan. Honestly, it was a quick little oversight, and I'm more than happy to research that farther. And I mean, it's outside the 50-foot buffer zone to an active cranberry bog, so it's something that we could address after the fact if need be.
Well, it's within the buffer zone, Amy, right?
It's within the 50 to 100 foot buffer, yes.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I would like to know if that's permitted before we approve the addition.
Any insight from the proponent on this question?
Hello?
Hi, yes, I don't know, I can't answer that question. However, like I said, we are just looking to purchase this property. And this addition would be something that we wouldn't do for, say even 6 months at the earliest. However, our purchase is dependent upon the approval or even denial of this application. We've had, the time in since the end of February. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question for you about the deck, but I just kind of wanted to throw out there that, our contract to purchase has been kind of pending, on waiting for this meeting.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Jeremy. My name is Jeremy Gingras. I'm the current owner of the property.
Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to say the deck that was put on there was done when we built the house back in 2006 and was permitted through that process.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Ernie, is that satisfactory?
Well, I guess I'm still puzzled as to why it's not showing on the plan.
Amy's checking on the plan, the date of the plan.
The plan date is March 17th, 2006. It was the septic plan. May not have been the conservation plan. I can definitely check in on that.
Can we look at this and give her either a negative or a tentative approval based on the requirement that if the deck is not permitted, she come back with an after the fact request?
Let me ask a question. Does the work in 2006 have a certificate of compliance? We don't know. So, I mean, these are questions that Amy can resolve. I mean, we do have the present owner saying that it was permitted.
I do have a certificate of compliance.
Okay, so I think I'm comfortable moving forward with this. If, yeah, I mean, Amy can check on it. I don't know what the ramifications would be of approving it and finding out that there was an issue.
The new owner would take responsibility for it.
Okay, did you folks hear that? Yeah, so if we do approve it and there was a compliance problem with the deck, then the new owner would take responsibility. So it's really, I guess, a question for the proponent if they want us to continue while we do this research, and also for commission members that feel more comfortable having us continue while this research is being done. I feel it's a relatively minor issue, and so I don't mind moving forward with, the owner participating, saying that he has a certificate of compliance. Any thoughts, Ernie? I mean, would you like us to really cover this and check it out?
No, that's fine.
Hey, Amy, there's an awful lot of feedback here. There's a lot of phones or whoever, that are without pictures that are unmuted, and that might be part of the problem.
Sorry, I'm not controlling.
Yeah, folks have to mute themselves after they finish speaking, and that might help. Well, let me ask Jim. Jim hasn't spoken on this project. Any comments, Jim?
Yeah, I don't have any further comments. I'm okay moving ahead as we're talking about here.
Okay. Well, maybe what's your thought? Is it kind of a loose end if we approve it without this check, or is it better to continue it and figure this out?
I think we could approve it.
I think we could approve it, and then it would be, if anything, it would be an after the fact that the new owner would have to take up, and it could be more of a civil matter between the new and old owners regarding the filing for that. But if Jeremy says it's been permitted with a certificate of compliance. We can definitely check on that. But I don't see any reason we can't move forward with it tonight. I think the deck would have been permitted, especially back in 2006. And it's within the 50 to 100 foot buffer.
Yeah, okay.
So I think we would have permitted it, but we will double check on that anyways.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So I'll ask Krista, is she okay with that process? Because I think we're ready to advance on this. If we did find the deck was not permitted, then we would probably have to have an after the fact process. But I feel good hearing from the present owner that it was permitted with a certificate of compliance.
May I don't want to take up any more of your time, but may I just ask quickly what that would entail and what exactly that means for us?
Well, we would approve the project tonight, and if we found the deck was out of compliance and the property changed hands, then it would be, would that be a matter for the new owner? Yeah, that's the way it goes. So it's your choice if you'd like us to continue for 2 weeks to try to figure this out. I do view this as a fairly small matter.
Amy, how much does it cost to file an after the fact?
I mean, it would probably be an RDA, maybe $85. After the fact is $85. It's something I could check in on within the next day or two, definitely by the early part of next week, to see if those applications were filed. And I apologize for not looking into that farther. So I would recommend you approve tonight. I can get you the information by early next week. And then you can make a decision regarding the purchase. It is a fairly small matter to permit that deck if it is not permitted.
Okay, thanks, Amy. I think if you're okay, Krista, then we can go forward with that information. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I'm sorry, just so I understand it. If anything, it would just mean that we would have to get the deck permitted retroactively, so to speak.
Yes, an after the fact filing. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And that could be a discussion point between you and the present owner if you wanted. But pretty small matter overall. So I'd like to ask one of the commissioners to make a motion.
Hey, Bradley,
Yeah.
if it were not permitted and they file an after the fact notice of intent and it's within the jurisdiction, then it would not just be the filing fees, it would also be mitigation as well.
It could be. It would be our decision. It would be, the footprint of the deck and the 52-100, the type of resource or habitat that was disrupted would come into consideration. I don't think, it would be a very large matter. It'd be a 2-to-1, I think. So, we could probably resolve it with some plantings, but either way, my preference is not to hold this up, but it's really up to the proponent if they would like to go forward or wait for 2 weeks.
We're comfortable going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if one of the commission members would like to make a motion.
I'll move to accept the determination of applicability.
Okay, Mark has made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Seconded by John. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I have a
Okay,
question. I was muted and didn't get it. Are we adding a -3? Amy, did you want?
Yes, that was Amy's recommendation. It probably should have been entered into the motion, but yes, it is a -3 determination.
Okay, aye.
May I ask what that means? I'm sorry.
I'm going to let Amy describe what is the nature of a -3 determination.
A -3 determination is an approval, and a -3 means that the project is within the buffer zone to a resource. Can you hear me now? It means the project is approved, but it's within the buffer zone to a wetland resource area. That's all it means.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for your time. The next item on the agenda, I am going to abstain because of a potential conflict of interest and ask our Vice Chair, Ernie, to lead that hearing. Ernie, did you hear that? Ernie, we coming in? Can everyone else hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to ask, oh, there he is. Hey, Ernie. Ernie.
It's freaking my phone.
All right, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Stan to sub in, if that's okay, to lead the next hearing. Is that okay, Stan?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if you just want to announce the next RDA, and I will abstain from voting.
Okay, we have a request for determination for the Mary Jane Trust on 1039 Route 28 for a confirmation of a resource area delineation.
Good evening. This is John O'Reilly. I'm representing the Mary Jane Trust. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. We were here, we were at Town Hall a few weeks ago, and there was a question that came up about the riverfront area and where mean high water was in association where that start of the 200-foot riparian zone would start. And what we have done is we've actually gone into the wetland again and better defined the ditch or the Red River, if you will, the banks of the river. So we have that defined and located on the plan, and our 200-foot buffer zone, 200-foot riparian zone has been updated. The other change to the plan is, if you remember, the original noted salt marsh, and that was an incorrect labeling. It is really a freshwater vegetated wetland that encompasses the river, and the flags that are shown on the plan starting from number 1 up through number 24 represent the edge of the BVW. And beyond the BVW, we are again still dealing with a coastal bank that's defined by elevation and slope. I think I went over that pretty well the last time we met. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Amy, do you have anything you want to add?
I agree with the revised delineation. I would recommend approval with a positive 2 and 5 delineation, and that means that the wetland boundaries are confirmed as now correct, and that this area respective buffers are within conservation jurisdiction, and I'll leave it at that for now.
All right. I guess I can start. Ernie, are you hearing us now?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. Do you have any comments on this?
Nope, it all looks pretty straightforward to me now. It's good.
Okay, Mark?
No, I'm fine.
Jim?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Okay, Carolyn?
No comments.
I guess I got everybody. I'm fine. So.
Well, you missed me, and I'm fine.
Where are you? Oh, there's your picture. Okay.
Here I am.
Your picture disappeared for a while. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jim.
No, I'm fine. I don't have any comments, but it looks good to me.
Okay. Do I have a motion from anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve the confirmation of resource delineation with a positive 2 and a positive 5 delineation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're all, like, it's unanimous.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Okay, I'll turn it back over to you, Brad.
Okay, appreciate it. So next on the agenda, we have 49 Nons Road, map 5, parcel W1-20, proposal for a deck expansion. Do we have a representative here?
Yes, Chairman. John O'Reilly again, representing Encore Construction and the Dunn residents. I don't know if Dale Nicula is on the line or not, but he was going to try to listen in. Again, we were in front of the commission a few weeks ago. We're in a question on whether or not the area seaward of the house was coastal dune deposits and what impact those deposits would have on the location of the resource and the associated buffer zones. The Dunns engaged Dan Humphreys, coastal geologist, who did a series of about 7 borings. They are shown on an updated plan. The latest revision on the plan should be March 25th. He did 7 borings and found that the sediment did not yield itself to a dune resource. It was more of a glacially deposited product, but his narrative that I believe you should all have as part of this revised package outlines his findings very clearly. In addition to the 7 borings, we have revised the plan to show the addition of 4 cedar trees. We have 2 on the eastern side of the lot between the house and the resource, house and the creek. And we have 2 additional trees shown in front of the deck off to the west a little bit. This is in regards to the removal of a 10-inch pine that would be butting up against the deck expansion. So we're trying to offset that removal with 4 trees. The deck, if you will, if you remember, is just a simple 6-foot extension of the deck that's out there now. We're simply moving the sonotubes, adding 6 sonotubes to support the deck. The closest the deck is getting to the resource is just shy of 67 feet, with a limit of work of 62 feet to the resource. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any comments for us, Amy?
Thank you for having Stan out there to look at this. I went back out myself and went in the same areas that he did some borings and took a look at it too, because I'm always trying to learn as well. And there was a fine veneer really of sand, a windblown sand on top, but it was very fine. And just down below it is darker, coarser sediments. I would agree that it's not coastal dune on the property. And it was my opinion that the expansion is within the 50 to 100 foot buffer zone to the salt marsh being the resource area. I also recommended and spoke with the applicant about this, add and marsh algae to the buffer zone in the house, or buffer zone in the rear of the house, which would enhance the habitat of the buffer. Some of that vegetation had been clipped fairly recently. Major, but we want to make sure that this becomes true buffer zone to the marsh. And I think a little bit of it will go a long way. And the applicant had agreed to the 10 plantings. So with that, I would recommend with a -2 and termination.
Thank you, Amy. Well, let me run through comments from the commissioners. Looks like Ernie, you're first on my list.
Yeah, I have no comments, Brad. I think this is fine.
Okay, thank you. Stan?
No comment.
Okay. Let's see. I've had a shuffling of order. Mark, you're next.
Oh, I agree with Amy.
Okay, Carolyn?
Unmute.
Any comments?
Unmute.
There we go.
Amy, you're okay with the plantings of the 4 cedar trees, the way they're proposed?
Yeah, I think it's fine. It will still provide them with a view without having them be inclined to prune them in the future.
Okay. No comments.
Thank you, Carolyn. John?
Yeah, I have no comments. This looks fine to me.
Thanks. Jim?
Yeah, with the additional plantings that Amy mentioned, I'm fine with it.
Okay, thank you.
Chair? Brad?
Yes.
It's John O'Reilly again, I'm sorry. Amy was cutting out, or I was hearing twice, double her, but we did have a conversation or exchange emails. She did mention looking for additional plantings, and we did agree with that. I thought I would let her bring that up and not I. And we're comfortable working with staff. I believe that's how we left it, that we would find an area, seaward of the house to place these various shrubs. I think the number was 10. I just want to confirm that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, we have a recommendation for a -2 and 3 determination. Do one of the committee members wish to make a proposal? I mean, a motion?
I'll make a motion for the approval for deck expansion for 49 Nons Road with a -2 and -3 determination.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, seconded. And all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a request for determination of applicability for 113 Brooks Road, map 12, parcel L5. It's a proposal for a new city. We have a representative here.
Yes, good evening. Dan Croto from Moran Engineering. Hear me fine?
Yes.
Got it, Chairman? So this is just an existing house looking to upgrade their septic. The current cesspools are very high groundwater over at Brooks and Nehoyden Street. So the proposed, to get the 5 foot above groundwater, we're looking at a 5 foot retaining wall. It is behind, it is and will be behind 2 existing stockade fences, so it shouldn't impact the neighbors. As for the view of the 5 foot retaining wall, putting it in the area at the corner of Nehoyden Street and Brooks Road creates a zoning issue with visibility at pulling out of Nehoyden Road. To meet the zoning numbers, it puts it right up next to the house, which the owners would really like to keep it where the existing septic is and just bring it up to meet the required and needed 5 foot separation to high groundwater. So it'll be about 6 foot to groundwater now, 5 foot to groundwater in a worst case scenario. And in that 5 feet above the saturated soil is where you get your biological treatment, the aerated soil. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a tight lot, and it's in the floodplain, and then there is a isolated vegetated wetland that the whole neighborhood surrounds to the southeast. So with that, this project, we'll have to go to Board of Health also, and probably Zoning Board of Appeals because of the retaining wall. And with that, the basic system is just go into the primary settling tank and then go into pump chamber, then going up to a pressure dose leach field so that it evenly spreads over this area of sand, and that's where you get your best treatments. They're not overloading one spot. So with that, I'll ask for questions.
Thank you, Dan. Amy, any comments for us on this?
I looked into whether or not there could be any other place farther from the wetland here on this property. The only place really is at the corner of Boyden and Brooks Road. But with the wall, it would create, or a mound even, it would create a visual hazard coming out of those roads. So as this is going from a cesspool to a standard Title V system, it is an improvement over what's existing. And I would recommend approval with a -2 and 3. This is in a floodplain, so it's technically in a resource area, but it's also within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland.
Thank you, Amy. Oh, yeah, I'll run down, see if any commissioners have comments. Ernie, you're up first.
Yeah, I looked at the site, went out and visited that, and a question for you, Dan, how high will the field actually be above the ground level?
It's going to be 5 feet up, unfortunately. And if you drive down that Nehoyden Road, you can see other walls that are that are way up. But okay.
Because it was hard to judge from the plans what the height would be on that. Because when I drove out to the site, I noticed there's 2 large shrubs in the front of the property as it is that block the line of sight.
Yeah, it should be more open there. I think there's beyond us, but I think there's a lot of roads in the town that need to be fixed with the amount of traffic we have in the summer. The zoning board itself has a requirement to be 15 feet, because anything above 3 feet needs to be 15 feet back from the road right away. It's not impossible, or there's a chance that the zoning board would give that variance, and that's if the owner had allowed me to go in that direction. But the way he sees the property and the way he uses the property, he would very much like for it to go where it is and not try to get this zoning board variance in putting it in the front yard. He just feels like it really detracts from the neighborhood and his property. And the majority of your treatment is in that 5 feet of aeration above the groundwater, not in that extra 10 or 13 feet setback to the well. And once the effluent's in the groundwater, there isn't much treatment as it moves towards Nantucket Sound.
Okay, all right. Well, that's helpful to know. My preference would have been to put it in the front, but with that explanation, I guess it's understandable. Leave it in the back. If you feel that's adequate.
Okay, thanks, Ernie. Next up is Stan.
No comments, Brad.
Okay. Next is Mark.
No, I think that's probably the best of a less than perfect situation. I'm okay.
Okay, thanks. Carolyn, you're up.
I have no comments.
Okay, John.
Yeah, just one question. The plan shows an existing garage, and the proposed septic mound is right in front of the existing garage. I'm just wondering whether you're blocking access, or there's going to be a need, or is there access to the garage on the other side, or is it simply storage space?
The garage is accessed from the south side driveway, but it is just a storage garage. I guess I could have as easily written barn on that. Right now, there's this area of the yard where we're proposing the leaching is completely fenced off. So to install the leaching, we'll have to take a stockade fence down and then put the leaching in and then build the fence back. So there's no access, I guess, from that Nehoyden Street to that garage. Everything is off of Brooks Road.
Okay, thank you. No, I don't have anything else.
Thanks, John. Jim, you're next.
I'm all set with this one.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any comments from the public? I should be asking that question with every hearing. Okay, hearing none, I'd like to ask if the commissioner would like to make a motion on this proposal.
I'll make a motion to approve 113 Brooks Road new septic system with a -2 and 3 determination.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, you're all set. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a request for determination of applicability for 47 North Road, map 19, parcel S2, a proposal to repair an existing bulkhead. Is there a representative of the proposal here tonight?
Hi, yes, this is Tom Smith, the owner of the property. I'm also representing myself. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, what basically what I'm doing is just in dealing with a Chapter 91 license that's there already for repair on the bulkhead. Right now, it seems to be leaching a little bit of soil from behind it into the river, and what I want to do is go behind it and make it more solid and less susceptible to bringing the sand that's behind it into the river.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have any comments for us on this?
All right. It's an existing licensed bulkhead. The owner's the applicant. The land behind is slumped, as he said. Again, they just want to add a little bit of fill. It's going to be handwork and install some filter fabric. I'm guessing you would just seed the top of it with a native grass seed mix. It's pretty sparse there to begin with. It's a very tiny property. And I would be happy to work with the owner on this. I recommend approval with a -2 determination.
Thank you, Amy. Any comments from the audience? Hearing none, would one of the commissioners like to make a motion?
I have some comments. You haven't asked us, Brad.
Oh, I didn't go through the list? Sorry about that.
No.
All right, Ernie, you're first.
Yeah, my only comment was that the map that we got from Amy just shows the septic system and the plan for a tight tank, but nothing with respect to the bulkhead.
The plan does show the bulkhead on it, and it matches the license plan.
Amy, where will the work be done?
Tom can speak to this probably more directly exactly, but it's just behind the bulkhead in location of approximately where the deck is.
Right, yeah, that is the plan, is to dig out behind it, put some type of product that will keep it from filtering into the river, and then backfill to the existing grade that it is now.
And Tom, who's going to do this work?
I'll be doing it mostly myself.
So I assume, Amy, you're going to be overseeing this.
Yes, I'd be happy to. It's pretty straightforward, small project.
Okay, moving on to Stan. Any comments, Stan?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to be done just by filling it in. I mean, it's filtering into the river now. I don't know how you're going to prevent it from just continue filtering in with whatever you're going to put in there to fill it up, to backfill the wall. And then if you're looking out towards the river from the house to the left side of the road, which would be the north side, I guess, it looks like even during some high tides, water is coming up higher than where the bulkhead is right now and coming around the side of it. So again, I'm not sure how you're going to prevent this from continuing to happen.
Well, what's happening right now is it's kind of leaching in between the boards that are there on the existing wall. And my plan is to go behind the wall and put plastic so it doesn't leach in. Basically, it's coming between the boards and kind of slowly sifting it out. And yeah, in high tides and what I've experienced in the short term that I've owned it, that's definitely kind of a storm factor more than anything else. Regular tides don't seem to be a giant issue there.
But a lot of your wall is under with the deck over it too. So how are you going to get in underneath there and fix that part of the wall with plastic?
I'm gonna open that up and just go in there and do whatever I have to get the plastic behind the actual wall.
Okay, I have no further comment.
Thanks, Stan. Let's see, next up would be Mark.
I have no issue with this at all.
Thank you. Carolyn?
When I saw it, it looked like it was absolutely necessary to do something, and I'll have to defer to the rest of you for an opinion as to whether his plan is the best one to do it. I have no other questions.
Thank you. John, any comments?
No, I don't have any other questions other than what's already been asked, so seems like a reasonable approach.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, my only comment would be with the lack of a real plan of action that's important for Amy to oversee what's going on there. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's my plan, to deal with Amy through the whole process.
Perhaps prior, we could get a kind of a bullet point construction, a step-by-step construction protocol to add to the file for you, and we would have a pre-construction meeting on site anyways.
Which is perfectly acceptable with me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, so that you are not overburdened with building this retaining wall, Amy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any comments from the audience? Seeing none, would one of the commissioners like to make a motion on this project?
I'll make a motion to approve the RDA for 47 North Road.
With a -2 determination.
With a -2.
Okay. Thank you. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the notice of intents. And we have the same, well, a nearby parcel, 52 North Road, map 19, parcel S1, proposal for additions. This is you as well, Mr. Smith?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I'm the owner of both the properties. I bought them together just recently. And what my plan is to expand on the master bedroom on the first floor out 3 feet by putting in sonotubes to carry the load of that 3-foot expansion. And also there's a front porch area on the new addition that carries the deck and the second floor load, which is 4 by 12. And that's basically it. The sonotubes, I think I have 4 located to carry the load on that particular addition.
Okay. Amy, do you have any comments for us on this?
Yeah, the additions, as you can see, are very small, 3 by 12 and 4 by 12. One is in the 50-foot buffer zone. The other one kind of straddles that line. But in this case, I really, because they're so minor, and because other parts of the house are actually closer to the resource area, I would recommend approval, provided that the owner do the 3-to-1 mitigation required, which would be a total of 252 square feet. On the plan he provided, he put a little box where the plants would go. I did speak with him and I stated that a row of plantings along the edge of cleared area might be better. I'm happy to work with him on species and number, because it is such kind of a small area, 250-ish square feet. It's really not very big. I don't think we need a formalized planting plan. And the property has been in the past, and I hope will continue to be kept very natural. I did make him aware of the no chemical application condition that he will have to abide by, and he is fine with that. So with the condition of mitigation to be done within the same growing season as construction, I would recommend approval.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So for comments among the commissioners, I'll start with you, Ernie.
I think he's muted himself.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I have no comments. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Let's see, next, Mark.
I agree with Amy.
Okay, Carolyn?
It's fine with me.
Okay. John?
Yeah, no comments.
And lastly, Jim?
Yeah, I think this is gonna make sense. It would be nice to see the plantings on the plan just to make sure they're gonna go over the existing lawn area and not in the more wetland vegetation, or just to see where they are. I think it does make sense to go landward of the wetland vegetation in a strip, but it'd be nice to confirm where that's going to be.
Yeah, just to, Amy and I discussed this thing, and she told me where she thought it was best to lay this out. I totally agreed with her, and we came up with a line around the perimeter, which she thought and I thought made sense. And I plan to do whatever she thinks is right in that area.
Once we have our on-site visit, Jim, Tom and I can discuss the types of plantings, and I could send the commission kind of a revised plan, or Tom can send a revised sketch of what and where those plants are going to go exactly. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. It'd just be nice to take a look at that at some point. Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jim. I have a question. I guess it's probably best.
You missed me, Brad.
What's that?
You missed me this time. Stan.
What happens when somebody leaves, the whole thing shuffles? So sorry about that, Stan. You're up.
Just the question. I mean, I'm surprised nobody commented. We are talking within the 50, which we normally are against that. I mean, I don't really have a problem. It's part of the house and everything, but it is within the 50. And the other question I had when I was out there, it looks like that there's been trees that have already been cut down recently near the house.
Yeah, I can address that. The tornado that they had last year took down a bunch of the stuff to the left. It affected the cherry tree and a bunch of oak trees and some other stuff. And I just went in there and kind of cleaned it up to kind of make it look better for the neighbors as a whole. Most of that stuff is coming out anyway for the new septic system that was approved by for the previous owner. But I just wanted to kind of clean it up and get it out of the way until my tree guy can get that stuff out of there. Does that answer your question? And can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Stan. I was about to make the same question because I wasn't able to make it to this site. And so I was curious how we'd consider this to be compatible with our regulations for no new structures in the 0 to 50 no disturb zone. So maybe I'll direct that to Amy. Is this a very highly disturbed lot already? Why would we exempt our regulations from a new structure in 0 to 50 in this case?
I think you have to look at whether or not the proposed project would have an adverse impact to the resource area. And because the new additions are so small, and there are portions of the house that are closer to the resource, and in addition, with the additional native planting along the edge of, taking place of lawn, I thought that the project wouldn't have a negative impact, but would have a positive impact with the addition of the plantings. So when the commission can find that a project in the 0 to 50 will not have a negative impact to the resource area, you can grant the variance from that.
Okay. And was there a variance requested?
Yes.
There was, okay. All right, well, I'd say not even generally, but almost all the time, not really supportive of new structures in the 0 to 50. And I think for me, the bar to show that there would not be positive, but not be negative, but positive impacts is very high. So that's my feeling, but everyone has spoken, so I think we can move to a motion unless there's any comments from the audience. Okay, hearing none, if one of the commissioners would like to make a motion on this proposal.
Brad, I'd move we approve the notice of intent for 52 North Road of construction of 2 additions on the existing house.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay.
No.
Nay. So we have two negatives and 4 positives. Is that correct? Stan and myself voting negative.
You have 7 members altogether.
So if you could do a roll call when it is a mixed vote, that would be really helpful. A roll call vote, just say your name and aye or nay.
Okay, I'll ask Ernie.
I vote aye.
Okay, Stan?
Stan is no.
Okay. Mark?
I vote yay.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Okay, John?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Okay, myself, Brad Chase, nay. So that'd be 5 positives and 2 negatives. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have 0 Old Campground Road, map 30, parcel C11, proposed to construct a duplex. We have a representative here.
Yes, Chair, John O'Reilly again. I believe that this parcel C11 we're looking for a continuance. Amy, I believe that this was the one that we asked for the continuance for the next meeting.
I'm sorry, I might have got the maps and parcels wrong. So you're talking about 2 Old Campground or 12?
No, 2 Old Campground.
Is the map 30 parcel C11?
Yes.
Okay,
So I did switch them up, but not in my review. So yes, this one, they would like a continuance to April 15th. I apologize for that confusion.
No problem. Okay, I move that we continue the notice of intent for 0 Old Campground Road until April 15th.
We did this yesterday.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's already continued.
I thought we continued 12 yesterday.
You know, we did because my notes had it reversed. So I think what we should do is continue C11 and then open up C12. Is that the right way to go? John?
That works.
Okay. All right. So again, my motion is to continue 0 Old Campground Road until April 15th, 2020. May I have a second, please?
I second it.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Then moving on to 0 Oak Campground Road, map 30, parcel C12, construction of a duplex. Go ahead, John.
I think I just messed everybody up.
Parcel C11, parcel C12 is the the house number 2, which is the southern lot. And parcel C11 is what we're here for tonight, which you folks just continued. I'm sorry, this is house number 12. It's the most northern lot that I'm here for tonight.
Okay, so parcel C11, we're going to have a hearing tonight.
I apologize for the confusion.
No problem. Okay, well then, if you want to go ahead and describe the project for parcel C11, and we'll continue the one C12 next.
Okay, thank you. So we are dealing with the, we were here a few weeks ago for the duplex in question. The commission gave us some great feedback on their concerns on encroachment into the 50 to 100 foot buffer zone. Some committee members had made a suggestion on relocating the dwelling. So what we worked with Davenport Companies is we rotated the dwelling in a counterclockwise rotation closer to Old Campground Road. So we're holding 27 feet from the road where the previous setback was closer to 36 or 38. The rotation pulled the majority of the structure outside the 100-foot buffer zone. We actually did modify the deck size. The previous plan showed a deck 12 feet deep, and the deck that's on the current plan is 10 feet deep. And you can see that we have 99.3 to the resource from the deck corner, wherein the previous plan was 88 feet. So we've increased that by 11-foot setback. In doing the rotation of the house, we were able to pull the limit of work further away from the resource. The original plan had it at 59 feet, and the current plan has it at 78 feet. We achieved that by, again, taking some comments the commission had by making the slope a little bit steeper off the back of the house. If you remember, I was trying to hold about 25 feet for a rear yard, if you will, or level area behind the duplex. So we've tightened that slope up to a 3-to-1. And on that slope, we are now proposing a series of shrubs. I did add a planting note to the left side of the plan, wherein we have, it's under the conservation notes, we identify that we're looking to plant high bush blueberry and some arrowwood. We have a total number of shrubs, about 27 being proposed, size 3 to 5 gallons. The planting area, the restoration planting area, is about 860 square feet. The other change I just want to bring to the commission's attention, the previous plan had just over 3,200 square feet of disturbance between the 50 and 100. This plan in front of you, and you can see this calculation on the site plan on the right side of the plan, where the area of disturbance within the 50 to 100 is 1,740 square feet. So we've reduced that. We've almost reduced it by 50%, probably closer to 55, 60%, 40 to 45% reduction. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any summary comments for us, Amy?
Yep. Thank you very much for taking this back and reworking things. I made an error in my site summary. I said everything was outside the 100 and you're at 99.3. So that's my error there. But for almost all intents and purposes, the structures are completely outside the 100-foot buffer, with the exception of a tiny corner of the deck and some lines for the septic system, which will be buried. We have a 50-foot no disturb zone. You're not disturbing anything within the 50. We have a 60-foot no new structure regulation. You have no new structures there. the boulders and the plantings will create really almost a living fence or a barrier, certainly for people to deter people from going into that area. So I do think while there is still some disturbance in the 100-foot buffer, I mean, we don't have a 100-foot no disturb zone. And on an undisturbed lot, it's very hard to do any mitigation. So I do think you've minimized, and that after that, you will just do some restoration planting and have a little bit, it looks like, of lawn area potentially that would have to be native lawn in the back of the deck. So I do think that this project meets our standards. I think it is a vast improvement over what a lot of projects near wetlands are, recognizing there is still some new disturbance to the 100-foot buffer. But I would recommend approval of it.
Thank you, Amy. All right, let me start with Ernie on comments.
So just so I'm clear, this is parcel 12, the northernmost parcel of the two, correct?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Good. Okay. That being the case, no, I think the revision of the footprint is a vast improvement, and I'm comfortable with it. I think the only disturbance that I see other than the corner of the deck is all mitigation, essentially. So I'm fine with this. It looks good.
Thank you, Stan.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Mark?
I'm satisfied.
Okay, Carolyn?
It seems a little incongruous to me for someone to have to mitigate when they do a small spot in an already disturbed area. Whereas this is doing a fairly big spot in a beautifully pristine lot. Isn't there some way they can do some mitigation?
We don't yet have, I mean, we could ask them to think of ways, but right now on this lot, I don't see that there is a way to mitigate for it because it is natural. We don't yet have it in our bylaw for any type of offsite mitigation or things like that, but that's certainly something the commission we could talk with the applicant about if there's opportunity for it, if the commission sees it as necessary.
It just seems odd to me that he can take this lot that is pristine and yet not have to mitigate. But if we have no recourse and no way that there's no way there on that lot at all that it could be improved, the habitat, or
it's in a very natural state. The only invasives really on these properties are, and I don't even think this one has any, but there are some invasives along some of the properties along the roadside there. But again, we're mitigating for area that's disturbed, yes, but not for structure so much.
I have nothing else to say.
Just a quick follow-up to Carolyn's comments. Is it possible to have some vegetation that might prevent future encroachment of the 0 to 50? Is that a possible mitigation feature?
Well, yeah, we could certainly take a look at that. That was one of the reasons that we opted for boulders along the top of the slope. And as Amy said, you know, we're creating a shrub barrier, if you will. And so I would think that, you know, the intent of this housing is going to be rental housing for families or individuals, and it's going to be managed by the Davenport companies, and the intention is to basically have the slope naturalize. So when it is naturalized and established, you're going to have about 88 feet of natural buffer which is, you know, well beyond your 50-foot no disturbed or your natural buffer that's critically important with your bylaws. But I mean, we could look at putting some trees, but quite frankly, you know, our way of looking at it is we're not planning to do anything between the edge of the boulders and the resource going forward once the plants are planted and established. But you know, I am not saying no. I just maybe define the question and define what you'd be looking for.
Yeah, I guess I'll pass it back to Amy and just said, are there any species that might provide different habitat values, different canopy between the boulders and the 50 line?
It is fairly heavily treed and shady in there. It's really been in its natural state for a very long time. So I do feel like what wants to grow in there is growing in there. So I wouldn't do a great deal of augmentation in there. There might be some spot areas for a couple of additional shrub plantings. I don't really see maybe a couple understory trees like sassafras or something like that. But it's, when you see an area like this, I mean, it's just established itself over a long period of time without alteration. So what's there, it's kind of what wants to be there. But if you wanted a couple of, you know, additional plantings in very specific areas, I could look at that with the applicant to just enhance it a little bit, but I wouldn't touch it very much.
Do they have any plans for foundation plantings?
There will be some foundation plantings along the proposed walkway out in front of the building, but the rear of the building is planning to be deck and lawn for 25 feet before you get to the boulders.
So can we request native plantings for the foundations plantings as opposed to hydrangeas?
Those would be outside the 100-foot buffer. So we really, you can ask, but they don't have to abide by that.
Okay, no other comments.
Okay. John?
No, I don't have any comments. This, other than that, this seems like a big improvement over the previous plan. So, and I honestly it's not clear to me what more could be done.
Mm-hmm. Jim?
Well, I do share Carolyn's concerns with the unmitigated disturbance in the buffer zone. However, I think that they've done a good job at minimizing here, and you know, a good portion of the lot is going to remain natural. So what's important to me is to make sure everything from those boulders towards the resource is allowed to naturalize and stays that way. So for a condition, I propose maybe for 3 years that an effective living fence has developed there. Something that we won't be able to see that in 1 year or even 2 necessarily. That is important to me. It seems like the planting plan could maybe be beefed up a little bit on that slope. I think when you actually look at that planted, it might be quite sparse. Amy might be able to weigh in on that. I also see it might not be a bad idea to add a split rail fence to that where the boulders are. My only other comment would be the plan says drought resistant seed mix, and it should probably say something more along the lines of native seed mix for the lawn areas. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Brad?
Yes.
If I could, with regards to the split rail fence, we had initially talked to the Davenport companies about the split rail fence and they were very concerned that it would become a nuisance and a liability based on their experiences in their other rental properties. And so that's why we developed the boulders, and as opposed to a fence. We did consider a fence initially, and they have just found that it's more of a nuisance for them in their management of the property, their other properties. With regards to a 3-year window prior to a certificate of compliance, that's pretty typical of restoration projects. So I don't have any issue with that. You could certainly make it a part of the condition that, you know, dated photographs of the rear of the building to document how it was left when the certificate, you know, would be issued, you know, when we get to that point, if we get to that point. And as far as the number of shrubs, I guess we could be open to adding them. I think that, you know, once the shrubs are established and reach maturity, I think that slope is going to be well covered. And I don't think we'd have an objection if the commission wanted to put some a condition on the project that, you know, after planting or after maturity, the area might be augmented with several shrubs to be decided through staff. And the only other thing I'd like to add is, you know, I know we're within the 100-foot buffer, and some members are concerned of that, but, you know, we have a total area of the 100-foot buffer of just shy of 30,000 square feet, and we're disturbing 1,700 of it, and 860 of it is going to be replanted with those native shrubs. So it's a very small percentage that we're disturbing within your buffer zone. As I said in our initial meeting, trying to mitigate a vacant lot is nearly impossible. We did look at invasives. There aren't any invasives or substantial invasives here that we could mitigate using that protocol, but I guess I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the audience? Any further comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, Brad, just to follow up, I can see the stones working. I guess the concern is once the families are in there and the kids are playing, that won't establish as an effective living fence. So that's the condition that I'm looking for, is spelled out that that an effective living fence must exist for a certificate of compliance to be issued from at the boulders, essentially. So.
Okay, I think that's a reasonable suggestion.
And I don't have any issue with that, Chairman.
Okay, good. If there's no further comments, would one of the commissioners like to make a motion on this project?
I'll make a motion to approve the notice of intent for, I want to make sure we got the right one, for 12 Old Campground Road, Parcel C11. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And for the construction of a duplex, and those conditions that Jim mentioned would be in the order of conditions for the living fence.
Okay, do we have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, under discussion, any need to add provisions on no chemical applications or so forth? I would think so.
We will add that to the conditions for the 100-foot buffer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great night, folks.
You too. So next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for 33 Snow-In Road, map 8, parcel P3, emergency repair for existing bulkhead. Yep.
Do we have to go back to that one that we were supposed to continue because it got messed up?
I'll ask Amy, did we cover that continuance?
You did it last night, you're covered.
Okay. All right, so I think Don Monroe's up.
Good evening, everyone, through the chair. Thanks for another seemingly successful meeting so far. It's working pretty good. Appreciate all you guys' efforts. So we're back in front of you because they finished all the steel work at both properties, the Vin Helfrich's and the Weechmere Harbor Club. And Brad Chase, when we were at that meeting approximately a month ago, when we were at the completion phase, he wanted an as-built plan to show where the final steel bulkheads were actually placed, and then an area calculation based on that placement to the existing vinyl sheet pile bulkhead place, the original bulkhead placement. And those areas are on the plan. So the first one for the Helfrich's, you can see there's 3 mitigation areas over on the right-hand side of the plan, just under the north arrow. Mitigation area A is 54 square feet, which is the area between the amalgamated building property and the steel bulkhead that goes out along that building. Then area B is the area between the vinyl sheet pile old bulkhead and the new steel bulkhead. That's 210 square feet. And then area C, which goes along the southern side of the, along the northern side of the existing boathouse. That's 50 more square feet. So like I said, that particular portion of steel bulkhead is replaced. They finished that by March 11th, which was the target date. They were done with any in-water work at that time. There was some evidence of the decking up above settling, so they took the deck off and found that all 11 of the existing tiebacks had failed. They were actually sheared off completely. So they replaced those 11 with tiebacks under the decking, so it's landward of, you know, the steel work. But they needed to do that only because there's the steel is 4 feet to 5 feet below the top of the existing vinyl bulkhead. So we put in a whaler along the top of the vinyl and then reestablished those anchoring tiebacks so that we wouldn't have to come back to you to drive longer steel sheets. So what's happening is, if you look at the plan, there's the old stairway that would access the upper deck down to the lower deck down to the dock. They're in the process of reconfiguring that, but it's all landward of the steel sheets because they have to be able to get a stairway down to the next level of where the steel sheets are cut off from the upper vinyl sheets down, then down onto the dock. That's not going to change any of the configuration that's out there of the existing dock. That's all staying in place. The existing float isn't moving. That's staying in the same place. It's just a matter of getting from the upper deck now down onto the dock itself. And until they actually got the steel in, we really can't depict how those stairway is going to work. So it looks like we might have to come back with a stairway layout from the upper deck down to the dock to you. The only reason we can't show it now is because they had to pull the deck all off on the upper deck to replace the anchors, and then they replaced the deck, and now they have that elevation set, the steel, top of the steel set, so now they can determine what the stairway is going to look like and how it's going to go in. So we would like to be able to come back to you with a layout of the stairway at a later time, because we mainly are here to let you know and show you the areas of mitigation that Brad was looking for once the steel work was done. So we're only talking about the Helfrich one. We'll go to the next one when you open that one, because you didn't open them at the same time, but that's fine. There are areas of mitigation that we calculate on the other one as well. So Amy emailed me and asked me if the applicant, who is watching tonight, Ben Helfrich is watching, and he could answer questions if you need any response from him. but maybe you won't need to because I think we're really going to be able to cover this. She asked me what might be a fair mitigation amount because we really can't do any planting or anything because there's no place to plant. So it's really going to be more something towards the shellfish fund, I think, Brad. And I threw a number to Amy, maybe I'm thinking $1,500 for each, because each are roughly 300 square feet. The Helfrich one is 314 square feet. And the Weechmere is 326 square feet. So it might be an even amount between the both. Maybe you can talk about it and figure out what you folks want. But I think that's the main thing we're here is to let you know that we finished the work by the deadline we were supposed to finish. We actually filed our Chapter 91 by the April 4th deadline that we were supposed to have that in. That went in. It's actually going in tomorrow. Brendan Mulvaney is waiting for that, but he's worked with us on the 91 permitting. And so we're in the process of trying to close all the loops that are left open as a result of it being an emergency.
Okay, thank you, Don. Amy, any summary comments for us?
A quick question for Don. So you're looking at the commission to move on this tonight and then potentially come back with an amendment for the staircase?
However you guys want to handle it, whatever's going to be the easiest. If you wanted to approve this as just its own, then we amend it, that's fine. Or if you wanted to approve the mitigation that we've proposed and then leave it open, then we come back when the stairway is done. So it's all part of one project. It's up to you folks. Because it's really like, it's an after the fact notice for the emergency. So you really can issue an order of conditions, but it may be too cumbersome to issue the order for the stairway that's not in yet. So it might be easier to handle as an amendment.
That's what I'm thinking. And that way we can see what the plan is for the stairs before. This is the after the fact part. I would recommend that we treat them well, since we don't have a plan for the stairs yet, that we would potentially move on this part tonight and then take that up as an amendment going forward if the commission agrees. Can you elaborate if there was any change really from what was proposed to what is actually existing out on site?
The only thing that, because we weren't able to determine how many anchors would have to be placed, we did show section views of each of the walls, and the only wall that needed any tiebacks was the bigger wall, and we didn't know how many we were going to find that were sheared off, so that it wouldn't be necessarily a change. It would be that we know the number that we had to put in. There was 11 manta rays, and we put in 11 tiebacks with a tieback block that's set in the ground at the backside, right at almost the foundation of the building. And that's all underground. And then the deck goes back over that. So that would be really the only thing that was a hidden entity that we didn't really know. We weren't trying to hide it. We just didn't know what we were going to find in terms of what we might need for tiebacks. But we did give you a section view of what that was going to look like. So that's in your original plan, the original plans we filed. Of the design for the emergency, so that we could refine that as well if you wanted us to actually, like maybe in plan view, show you the actual location of each one of those tiebacks.
I don't think it should stop us going forward necessarily tonight, but it would be nice to have that on record. That way, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, we just have a really accurate plan of where exactly everything is, and for Mr. Helfrich and for the Witchmere to go off of. And then in regards to the mitigation, and my comment will be the same for the next one, is with the 314 square footage of disturbance for Helfrich and very similar for Witchmere, when you look at the mitigation amounts that are proposed, it would amount to about 45 bushels. And that definitely is going to cover way, way more than those small areas. So it could be used to enhance the rest of the Witchmere Harbor ecosystem. And then I would just, maybe, I'm not the shellfish expert, defer to Brad or somebody else in terms of how this bulkhead, will it allow for shellfish growth behind the bulkhead? Are you going to probably see a little bit of a decrease in habitat? I just don't know. But I do think that this is a decent amount to start off with. And other than that, I have no other comments for this one.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I think what I'll do is I'll probably jump in and give my thoughts on mitigation and then ask all the other commissioners to step in. Should I open up the Witchmere hearing so we can talk about both? Because it's the issue's really connected.
Through the chair, yes, Brad, I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, so let me do that right now. We have a hearing notice of intent for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2, emergency repairs to existing boathouse and accessory structures. We'll have both hearings open at the same time. We'll discuss them simultaneously.
Through the chair, Brad, before you go on, there is no real changes on those two sections other than the mitigation. There is no need for tiebacks. It was just a straight driving of steel sheets. So it's relatively simple compared to the Helfrich tiebacks and things. So I just want to make that clear that there's really no connection between tiebacks between the two projects, just mitigation.
Okay.
Is that okay?
And I think that's what I'm driving at, is the mitigation concepts, they blend. And so we should discuss them together. And so, Amy, when we have impacts to resource areas, we often seek, is it a 4-to-1 mitigation?
Correct.
Yeah, so one of the things that I would like to put on the table and discuss here is that we've done a lot of seeding for impacts over the years. And what happens is you have alterations or elimination of functional habitat, and then you seed for a couple of years, and then the habitat's still altered. So I'm not a fan of just relying on that technique all the time. I think it can have some benefits to the public, because the public can go harvest shellfish, and that's beneficial. But I'd like to see opportunities to actually improve habitats or find restoration of other habitats. So what I'd like to see happen here is that some of the square footage of the disturbance is mitigated by creation of shellfish habitat, and then some of it's mitigated by the seeding proposal as discussed. And so one of the things that I want to see people think about and have comments on is whether it's suitable to have mitigation out of Witchmere and other locations. And if we can be specific.
I can't hear you.
What's that? Yeah, I can't hear you, John.
I can hear you, Brad. I don't know about anybody else, but you cut out about brother.
Okay, did you folks hear me otherwise?
You cut out.
Yeah, well, I was fine.
Yeah. Brad, I heard you. It's fine.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe, John, just something happened to your mic. Anyways, John, I can summarize it pretty quickly. I'm looking at the two areas. One area is above mean low water, and that habitat will be occupied by oysters and possibly soft-shell clams. The other area, probably largely quahogs. And so I'd like to see some of the square footage of disturbance be considered to be mitigated at a 4-to-1 ratio and have a contribution to a habitat restoration project, either in Witchmere or someplace else for oysters, and then have another parcel go towards the seeding as proposed. So that's my view. I'm not a huge fan of just seeding. I think seeding comes and goes. I like to see avoidance of impacts to habitats first, and if we can't avoid it, then try to improve habitats elsewhere. So that's what I'd like to see some structure to. So I'll open it up to comments, starting with Stan on the mitigation components of this, or any other questions you have.
I don't have any other questions, and I'm not an expert in that area, so I'll rely on your expertise in that area, Brad. But it makes sense to. I guess my only comment would be, isn't that what we're trying to do potentially with other properties that we can't mitigate on? Looking for alternatives?
It's a similar concept. What I'm suggesting is that there's amount of funding that would be available from this mitigation for the two properties. And I'm suggesting that we put half to seed and half towards an actual physical habitat restoration project for shellfish.
Okay.
And what would that look like as opposed to just seeding?
Well, the one idea that's, there to discuss presently is we have a Herring River Oyster Reef proposal that was supposed to receive funding from a mitigation project, at the shellfish hatchery in the Herring River. If acceptable to everybody, that could receive funding to create oyster reef habitat in Herring River. I don't know if I have a great location in Witchmere Harbor for that. There might be something, but I think the Herring River location is more suitable. So that's what I'm exploring right now in concept, is to try to create habitat at some location. So we're just not degrading habitat and seeding. Seeding is not going to create habitat. It's going to create some opportunity for a brief period of time, and then it comes and goes. And that's a question for Amy and others too. Is it suitable to take an attempt to create habitat out in a different location in the town of Harwich?
Through the chair, Brad, are you talking similar to what Wellfleet does, like culching or something like that? Fat?
Yeah, the proposal for Herring River, presently it's to take culch and have a vendor seed it with oysters and to place it at a location raised off the bottom so it might reduce predation, and then see if it can, create oyster reefs in that process.
So you're just talking that that some of the funding would go towards, or we don't have to necessarily call out what the restoration project is per se, but for shellfish habitat restoration for shellfish in other waterways of Harwich to be determined by the commission.
It could go that route. The proponent would have to be, agreeable to that concept. We would want to involve Heinz Prof, the Natural Resource Department, absolutely. But I think that would be my goal, is to see some habitat improvements that come out of it to counter the habitat losses.
Brad, I think that's admirable, and I think I would support it. But my preference would be that we have an idea up front of where the money would be directed to. At this point, I don't think we have a clear idea what that would be, and I'm not necessarily comfortable without having a definitive goal for this money to be applied to.
It's a good point, Ernie. I think we kind of, the way things are done now, we put mitigation towards seeding, and then we allow the resource director to decide where it goes later on. So in effect, that's happening now. And then secondly, we do have a proposal on the table for an oyster reef in Herring River. It would have to be permitted, so that whole process has got a long ways to go. But I'm comfortable having it go to two sources, a seeding fund and a habitat restoration fund. And both the Conservation Commission and the Natural Resource Department would be involved in that discussion down the road.
And is that restoration fund in place right now, though?
I think 3,000 from the shellfish hatchery was going to go towards it, but I don't know the status of that.
I'm worried that
Don't have a separate fund, if you will. We have the shellfish fund, which is where all that money kind of goes into. And then how you spend it pertaining to shellfish. Usually it's called out in the orders of conditions, so we know how much is going towards seed. But we only have that one fund, and I would hesitate against creation of another gift account. I think the language for the gift account allows the commission to not just do seeding, it's for habitat restoration too.
Mhm. It would be the order of conditions that would spell out where the money would go. Is that correct, Amy?
Well, the order of conditions would spell out that it goes to the shellfish account. But within that, you could give direction to essentially the natural resources director a little bit about where specific parts of that fund are supposed to be directed to, what efforts they're supposed to be directed to.
Is there any reason the Conservation Commission could be more specific in that regard to say what it should go to?
I think this is my professional opinion. The commission has not granted a permit for the Oyster Reef yet in the Herring River. So I don't think we can specify that it's going to go to that because that would assume that we approved it.
Mm-hmm.
So if it all went into the shellfish mitigation fund, there's nothing to say that we have any control over how the money would be used going forward then. It would be all up to Heinz.
No, I'm also in charge of that fund.
There you go.
Okay. I think the order could be pretty specific towards that it would have to go to habitat restoration as opposed to seeding, or at least a portion of it. So I would think we could do that.
Yes, you can put the wording in there that half of the money is to go towards this and half is to go to that. That's not a problem, and that will help Heinz and I keep track of just how much money goes for seed and how much stays for restoration.
Through the chair, before you vote on that, if you put it in the order, which is fine, it seems like, but let's say because the applicant doesn't have control over what someone does after they get the money and it doesn't go in the right fund, isn't now the applicant responsible because he's out of compliance with the order?
I would think you could craft the conditions where it just simply says the applicant is responsible to deliver those funds to the fund.
Okay. Okay.
And I think that's can be done. So let me think, Stan, you had comments. Mark, any comments?
Yeah, this isn't particularly specific, and I'm not particularly comfortable with just throwing it out in the wind as it's proposed. The suggestion of developing habitat, I understand the importance and I agree with that, but I'm not particularly comfortable how to go forward with it.
Any suggestions?
Not 100%, no, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think it's a different way of thinking about these projects and just watching what has happened, in recent years. I think we're losing, habitat here and there, and it's being mitigated for a really modest amount of seed, in my opinion. And it comes and goes. So I really think that we should be looking at things differently, and we should try to reclaim habitats. And, we could consider doing some type of a reef structure in Witchmere. The places you could put it would be very tight where it would not be a concern for navigation. So I don't have a great location to offer you right now. That would be a sit down probably with the harbor master and Heinz and Amy and just discussing that. Whereas I feel that the Herring River proposal has viability.
I recognize your point about Herring River, and I understand that project has got a lot of value, but it's also completely pending. I'd like to see more specifics as to the locations.
Yeah, well, that proposal is available. We can always continue and review the proposal as it stands. Let me jump up to, let's see, Carolyn.
I like the idea of restoration. My question is location. If we're asking people to mitigate because of damage done in a certain area, in this particular example, it's Witchmere. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with restoring in another area. I think if it's the damage is done to Witchmere, the restoration, the seeding should be done to Witchmere. If we admit, as you did, that Witchmere might not be an ideal situation for reseeding, we're admitting that the area is not good, and we have a litigation up against us right now. I think we should do everything we can to keep Witchmere healthy. So if they've disturbed Witchmere, I think Witchmere should be restored.
Okay. And just to be clear, Carolyn, no one's advocating that Witchmere, it wouldn't be useful in Witchmere. It's just a question of putting out seed versus trying to, repair habitat. And so
my comment is that if the damage is done in one particular body of water, the mitigation should be done in that area, if at all possible.
Okay. All right. Well, we're looking at collectively 4 times 740 square feet. So we're looking at 1,480 square feet is what we would typically consider if we were not pursuing a seed mitigation. So that's another thing to consider as well. John, do you have comments?
Yeah, Brad, I like your idea. I think your point that just putting seed out is insufficient and it doesn't address the loss of habitat. And however, I don't think that this conversation is the conversation and the forum in which we're going to resolve where the habitat restoration is going to happen. And I agree with Mark on that. But I don't think that should stop us from saying in the order of conditions that we want half of the mitigation funds to go to habitat restoration. And I think of it as a different kind of seeding. You're talking about seeding oysters, but we're also seeding new ideas and new ways to deal with this. And, we can talk around in circles, but taking this step will be an important step toward establishing an effort to do habitat restoration and perhaps motivate a little more effort. And perhaps we should be having, there are a lot of other side conversations we ought to be having outside of these hearings, but this seems to be like one of those, which is, what are the alternatives for habitat restoration? Are there other ways in Witchmere to do restoration other than an oyster reef and oyster river? This isn't the forum to have that conversation. We need to resolve this particular thing. And my feeling is the best way to do that is just follow the suggestion that we state in the order of conditions that half of the funds go to seed and half of the funds go to habitat restoration, and the Conservation Commission will work with the Natural Resources Director to determine where and how the habitat restoration occurs.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, those are good thoughts. Jim?
Yeah, I would agree with John precisely. I've got to apologize. My device I'm using, despite being on a charger, may cut out on me at some point. So if you lose me, that's what happened. But in relation to this conversation, I agree with John's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I'd like to add on back to this, Brad. I agree too. I don't think we have to be specific with the project, just as John says, but just say that we're going to have funds set aside for future habitat restoration. I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay. Circling back to Mark, I know you had some reservations. Is what John suggested a way that would work for you?
Yes, yes, it is. I do have a question though. in the event where there's a spending freeze, which is going on in town right now, are these funds also frozen, and does that take away the ability to utilize them going forward?
That's not known at this time. They did not specify, this is a revolving fund. I don't know if Larry Ballantyne's still on the call, but from the Board of Selectmen, but I don't believe.
I think he's gone in here. I think he's gone. I don't see him here.
It's not an answer I have right now. They didn't specify, from what I understand about that. It is potentially a question. However, this fund in particular can only be used for very specific purposes and not for municipal use. So I think if there was a spending freeze, the commission could make an argument to use that money. And hopefully, there won't be a spending, in next year or something like that. Maybe there won't be a spending freeze. We don't know. But yeah, I don't have a better answer for you at this time. I'm sorry.
Okay. What form of protection is there to stop that money to be used elsewhere? Can you just clarify that for me slightly?
I believe that they would need the permission from the Conservation Commission to use that. I could double check with council.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Carolyn, I want to come back to you because you had some reservations too. Oops, your mic's not on.
No, I totally agree with John's comments that this is, I think we're all in agreement that some money should go for seeding and some money should go for restoration. I think Mark's comments are very good to make sure we are able to use that money when we want to, which could possibly be a problem with the economies. And the location of where we use it is another discussion. But my feeling is in not just Witchmere, in Herring River and in other places, we should try our hardest to restore the areas that were disturbed.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Don, any thoughts on this concept?
I think you're on the right track. It's hard for me to envision how in the order you can specify one or the other. So if it's just if the language is appropriate, then I know the applicant doesn't have a problem with it. He's willing to put into the fund whatever you want to use the fund for, at the discretion of the Conservation Commission. But I realize it's a shellfish fund, so maybe in the future you have to think about having a specific conservation fund that you can use to do these restorations, because if someone donates a piece of property next year to the commission and it needs restoration work, then you'll have a fund available to do that work. So it wouldn't be now shellfish money, it will be conservation money. So you might want to think about, in your discussions later, in your deliberations about it, set up some sort of fund so that you do have the ability to say, we want half of this money to go to this fund because we know we're going to do some invasive species removal or something like that.
We actually are doing that, Don. We proposed that for town meeting, which now has been moved off to June, maybe moved off farther. But we proposed language essentially for offsite mitigation to add to our wetlands revolving fund.
That's great. So you could earmark some of this, because if it comes up in June and you're able to get it through, then you just dump this money or half of it into that fund, and then there you go. You're doing more than just seeding. So I think it's great. I think it's a good idea, because Brad makes a good point. Once the seeding's done, the seeding's done. And unless there's spat created and you don't know it, then and it's ongoing, the funding is now stopped, and now there's no, nothing resultant of it except that one initial blast of seeding. And I understand that.
Okay, good. All right, before we go further, I guess we should talk about amounts. Does anybody want to begin that discussion on what they think is an appropriate amount? I will say that the amount of disturbance is about 1,200 square feet per site. And so there's really no guidance that we have on what that means for the value of shellfish habitat as far as I know. So I think we've used mitigation for dock and piers projects and come up with a 45 bushels or thereabouts. But does anybody have any thoughts on the value of this?
I have a question, which is, you said the amount of disturbance is 1,200 square feet per site, but isn't it the mitigation amount is 1,200 square feet?
Thank you, Joan. That would be the 4 times,
right.
4 times 326 square feet for Witchmere and 4 times 314 square feet for Helfrich. So about 1,200 for each. My thought is that there was discussion of having, I think, $3,000 to buy 45 bushels. I think $3,000 for each location might be a better number.
I don't recall what Heinz had said in terms of how much, I mean, our normal mitigation for, docks and piers is 30 bushels a year for 3 years. And I don't remember how much how much area Heinz had said, that 30 bushels covers. My recollection was it was quite a lot. So I think 45 bushels would cover, I mean, it wouldn't be 45 bushels, say half of that amount because you're going to do half towards restoration, but 22-ish bushels. I don't know how much that would cover, but I could have that discussion with Heinz and we could come up with an appropriate 4-to-1, or you can just agree to something tonight with the applicant.
Yeah, because again, it's kind of apples and oranges with the seating. Whereas if we had an ideal place in Witchmere to mitigate, I think that I'd be advocating that we mitigate about 1,200 square feet for both sites. And if you created an oyster reef of 1,200 square feet, I think your cost would be a little bit higher than what we were discussing. So that's another way of looking at it. I think, Don, you probably wouldn't mind finishing this up tonight?
Yeah, we would like to, so that we can move into any kind of amendment for the stairway, because we'd have to, we need an order of conditions to actually amend. So we're kind of held up. As far as maybe just a little point on, like, I'm working heavily with Hillary Greenberg up on the aquaculture project up there, and we got the MIPA cert for that, and they do culching up there. And the culching is relatively less expensive than seeding. So building the reef might be, when you think of it, you might think that it's this big, gigantic thing that you do, but it's more laying down layers of shells and getting spat to grow on them, and then subsequently laying down more layers of shells. So the 3,000 per seems, so that would be 6,000 total, seems a little bit high, but I was thinking more if we were I started at 1,500, and I don't want to make it a bargaining thing. It seemed like maybe 5,000 would be appropriate for the whole thing, but that's just me trying to help represent the client.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your thoughts. And I think with oyster reefs, you have added costs. The materials are actually really inexpensive.
Yeah.
But I think you're permitting, if you bag your culch, there's a number of things that'll bring the cost up.
Okay.
But either way, what do folks think? I think we're close here.
Brad, I'd be comfortable with the 5,000, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
I would agree with that also.
Okay. Well, I think that if there are no further comments or any comments from the audience on this, any additional thoughts, Amy? So we probably should have motions for both locations, but have them approach the 5,000 in combination for mitigation. So 2,500 The square footage is a little bit off, but it's very close. So I think it might be easiest.
2,500 is fine for each, I think.
Yeah.
Brad, before we close this out, can I just, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but Don, just very quickly, what's the status of the bulkhead on the channel side? That was part of the emergency request originally as well.
On the, I'm not sure which one you mean there, Ernie.
Well, there was on the channel side of the Winchmere Harbor building, they were going to also put bulkhead because of the washout that's underneath that building, the pilings underneath there.
Okay, so the return was eliminated on that because it was too close to the navigable channel. So we worked with John Rendon. He wanted us to stop that particular return, which is along the north side of the long building. It stops right at the corner of the building before it enters into the channel. So there was no return going parallel in that location along the channel.
So this is it. There's no other work that'll be done there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. There's no more work under this permit, Don. The Winchmere potentially is thinking in the future of expanding on this work, but not under this filing.
Correct, but that's where, yeah, there's a lot of negotiation going on about whether the building goes up and it stays on piles or whether the riprap gets repaired underneath. So that it's really in limbo, but you're right. There may be something down the road.
Okay, well, I think I'll go forward and make a motion on the notice of intent for 33 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P3, and approve the emergency repairs to the existing bulkhead with the condition that mitigation is required and that $2,500 in mitigation funds will be provided to the town of Harwich have to be used for shellfish seeding and have to be used for shellfish habitat restoration, to be decided in consultation with the Conservation Commission, Conservation Agent, and Natural Resource Department.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Mark. So let's have some discussion. Are people okay with that language?
That sounds fine to me, Brad.
Sounds good.
Do you need to modify anything? It's pretty generic. But I think it'll work.
Through the chair before, so this is Amy, are we actually issuing an order of conditions for the emergency? And once that gets issued, we'll be able to amend to do the stairway?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Wait a minute, I'll second, oh, no, never mind.
Did we get a second already? I thought we did.
That's what I was questioning.
Yeah, we had a second already. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, let me move directly to the next notice of intent for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2, emergency repairs to existing boathouse and accessory structures. I move that we approve the notice of intent with a mitigation requirement that is the same as the previous, $2,500 to a fund to mitigate, half going towards shellfish seeding, and half going to shellfish habitat restoration.
Second.
Seconded by Mark. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, did anybody not vote? I think we're good. It's unanimous. Okay, thank you, Don. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna be right back. I gotta go get my charger.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, for the next one, the continuation date is April 15th, not May 6th, just to let you know.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and announce it. We can vote on this without Stan. So the next notice of intent is for 14 Mill Point Road, map 1, parcel J1-94, proposal for a new pier, ramp, and float. The proponent has asked for continuance to April 15th, 2020, and I move that we grant the continuance. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay.
Aye.
All right. Next, we have a notice of intent for 220 Long Pond Drive, map 105, parcel K2. Proposal to remove walkway steps, retaining wall, and construct a new walkway, landing stair, and stone wall with plant area of erosion. Do we have a representative here tonight?
Yes, Dan Croto from Moran Engineering. This is, and I believe also Rocky Clark.
Yeah, I'm here, Dan.
Is on the site. You are on. Great. So the main project is to remove an unsafe access to the water and put a safe access in. The set of plans that I submitted to the commission, the first sheet is existing conditions. Second sheet will be a blow up of the shorefront area with the site plan proposal. And then third sheet gives the details. Rocky Clark, through his company, drew the landscape plan, which had been recently revised after he and Amy went back and forth about the plantings for the bank. I also submitted pictures of the site, and anybody who went to the site sees the issue. And the issue is that the existing concrete steps and pads going down to the water are falling apart. So the idea would be to remove the concrete and put in a above grade structure on posts with decking. They want to use composite decking and go down to the water, have a landing, go down to the water for that method. The project that came to me and that Rocky was working on was the steps and fixing the landscaping that's eroded. When I went out to the site, I saw an issue created by the high water we've had in the last couple of years. We've seen so much erosion along these the south side of ponds where the winds were coming heavy from the north and the high water. It's eroding underneath the footing. So how do we stop the erosion from under the footing? Two methods that I came up with. One would be to put sheet piling right in front. That would certainly fix it, but a lot quicker and less work and less money would be try to just stop it for these couple of years, these years when the water's so high, putting graded stone under the wall, like a fine stone right under the footing that's up against the sand, and then just putting some 6 and 12-inch cobble stone right in front of that, just to get us over this heavy water time. So that was what we went for. We're at this point, we may ask to remove that part of the project, and we have to wait and see, get the final word from Natural Heritage and Endangered Species. My thinking is the existing, the deck, the steps down are over existing concrete and heavily landscaped area. Even with the footing stone, even though I'm only proposing coming a foot out in front of the footing to create a little barrier, I'm not sure how intensive the Natural Heritage is going to be on this. I did have some email discussions with them today. It's not overly easy to communicate with them right now. But we'd certainly like to get the commission's comments on the proposal and go from there. And Rocky, who is the contractor for it, is on to answer any questions along with myself about the site and the plantings. So hopefully people were able to get out to the site. It's a clear issue. It's unsafe. It's falling apart. The concrete is breaking. And I'll leave it with that.
Thank you, Dan. Amy, any summary comments for us?
Sure. So if you've been to the site, it's very clear that it is falling apart and unsafe. I don't have record of this. This house was built in the 50s or 60s. I don't know when this was built. It does look like it was built a very long time ago, but I don't know exactly. So originally, I do like the idea better of stone than I do of a bulkhead anyways. Stone has the potential with some crevices to not only dissipate wave action, but to actually provide additional habitat, which a bulkhead really wouldn't do. We're going to have to defer and wait for Heritage on this. They're concerned about a nearshore aquatic plants, which I wasn't looking for it, so I don't know if it's there or not. But unless they agree with Dan's minimization of the project, they might have to do a plant survey in the summertime. But if they agree with what Dan has suggested in minimizing some of that disturbance, maybe they won't have to. Their other note, which was interesting, was actually that they wanted completely native plantings along the top. The only reason I had suggested, at least half or a majority really in my site summary was because if you go to the site, there is an existing ornamental planting bed there. So I wasn't, if it was a virgin site, I would say all native plantings, but seeing as how this is an established planting bed, yes, it's going to get disrupted. I just wanted to see somewhat of an improvement habitat-wise to it, but Heritage did say they want all native plants, which would be a great thing, in my opinion, but you can talk to the applicant kind of about that. So we can't close on this tonight. We can get some feedback. I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, Mark, I'm going to start with you for comments.
Does the proposal include removing the entire concrete wall?
No, just the area where the steps are. And then I originally had putting stones right just in front of the footing to stop the undermining of that. That's where I believe I guess it's a pond shore knotweed is the issue. The endangered species habitat is the entire long pond, and then they just have a blanket 100 feet around the pond. The plantings that are 3 feet above the pond or behind the bulkhead, I'm surprised Natural Heritage would, I believe at that elevation in sandy soil, it's not an area where this species would habitat, but we'll get their final word once we revise the project to hopefully meet their criteria without intensive survey. So the area, to get back to your question, Mark, the area will be just in the step area where it's there's a timber wall and then there's the broken pads. The main walls is not what they're proposing. They're proposing just to get a safe method to get to the pond.
So nothing's going to go in front of the footing on the main wall?
We're proposing to put something in front of the footing, but we're not positive if we can because of the endangered species. In some of that area, there are plants that go right up to that footing. So if there's endangered species there, apparently they want a survey of it, and if there's endangered species there, they will not. I guess they will not allow that. I was a little surprised. It seems like a total mitigation project. I was a little surprised to hear, but the person who wrote the letter, I'm not familiar with, so I'm not, I was not able to get that person on the phone. The next person I was dealing with today seemed to understand the project a lot more.
Well, I mean, without anything on the table, I'm not sure that we could go forward. I don't see where there's enough information.
Just looking for your comments relative to if this project, what is approved as is, or at least with the steps area going down, removing the concrete and putting above grade steps. And then in that area on the bank side is a deteriorating timber wall that we wanted to put the stacked stones in that place. So what it looks like, and what I went over with Natural Heritage, it looks like we're increasing, once we get rid of those pads right at the pond level and we do above grade, we should be increasing the habitat for the endangered species. But I guess the point is if the project adds just the steps, or the project steps with just a 12-inch line of stones in front of that footing, is that something the commission would see as a positive project?
My first concern, once the concrete stairs are removed that's there right now, you don't have much support on that end of the wall, and it wouldn't take much for that to topple over. The stairway going down, I can see where that can conform, but I've got a lot of question about how to maintain the rest of the bank.
There's actually against that bank is a timber wall. I guess you can see it in the first page, the lower picture actually. So that area actually isn't a concrete wall against that back bank that we're looking at working and putting the stones. So the only place that would be to stabilize on that wall would be the 2-foot section coming into the bank. The whole rest of that wall is self-supported on the footing. So this, if anything, those little returns that are staying, and those stabilize the wall, at least for 5 or 10 feet. So the area what we're looking at doing is removing just those pads, and then that deteriorated timber wall, which you can see on the, like I say, that first page, the lower picture. So removing that and putting them doing stones in that area. So rebuilding something besides the timber in that area. We can certainly do timber if that's what would be wanted, but from what I can tell, and by removing that lower concrete, we're opening up an area, even though it's going to be under a raised deck, but it seems to create new habitat for this pondweed, or at least creates habitat down on that pond level, just for the 3 feet until we get to that stone wall, and then we'll go up to the regular height. Pretty straightforward, it seems.
Well, the idea of stabilizing that wall from one end to the other, I think, is a great idea, because it looks like there's a lot of potential movement, not knowing how far back the footing goes, because that's what's going to keep it upright. It's unlikely that it goes back more than a foot or two from the inner edge of the wall, and to carry that weight would probably have to go back 3 or 4 feet.
Well, I think, at some point there needs to be changes to that wall. I just think it's this part of to get stairs to the water hopefully for summertime, if it's going to be a big hang up with Natural Heritage, I think we'd like to just remove that from the project and just go with getting stairs down to the water. Granted, definitely within, if water keeps staying high and storms from the north, they will be coming back to you to work on that wall. But at this point, it's not dangerous. It's just certainly not ideal. But if there is a concern about knotweed in front of it. And there is spotty plants in front of it. I certainly didn't look at it for a certain type of plant. We didn't, but so that's the issue we have. I think fixing underneath the footing would be an ideal thing at this time, but I'm not sure how that's going to go with natural heritage.
Understood. I don't have a particular problem with replacing the stairs as it's suggested, but I would absolutely be in support of securing the base of the wall as much as possible. That's all I've got for now.
Thanks, Mark. Stan, any comments?
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify because you're more familiar with it, Dan. I looked at it. So the wall you're talking about is the long wall to either side of the steps. That you're.
Correct. That's what we saw the undermining of the footing of, but that wasn't.
And in your proposed plan, you were just going to shore up with rock in front of that wall, only part way.
Just the footing, just a repack under the footing, and then put a line of just 6-inch or 12-inch cobbles just to stop the waves from going under there. It's just it's just constant over the last 3 springs that there's been some it's been letting sand, it's been digging underneath there. It's not major energy hitting it from what I can see, but we just got to stop the continual eroding right there. Problem is there are some plants or spotty plants in the sand there. But the main project is not their sand. The main project is the actual walkway down, and the wall of 3 foot high would be set back from that wall you're looking at where the existing timber wall.
Right. No, I'm just trying to clarify. So the plan that I looked at had the cobble in front of the wall. So we're ignoring that. We're just talking about the stairway.
But I'd kind of like comments on both for right now. So when I come back after dealing with natural heritage, if they are willing to go ahead with putting, and we're just talking again 12 inches in front of that footing, if they are willing to go ahead with that, allow that, then I would like the commission to have reviewed that too and give us any feedback.
Well, I'm okay with the stairway. I mean, that really needs work. It's kind of dangerous for anybody to walk down to the water through that the way it is right now. That wall, though, it sounds to me like you've got a fairly significant cement wall there that looks like it's eventually going to fail over time. And I don't know, just putting a little bit of cobble at the footing is going to do the job, but I'm not the expert in that area. So that's all my comments, sir.
It's
fine with the stairway as it's proposed.
Okay. As for shoring up the footing, it was just a small project that I think will go a long way. Is it the final solution? Probably not, but it is an easy way to stop the pressure from, that wall from pushing forward. Right now, there's nothing really under the front of that wall. So it's a small fix that might not be permanent. We do understand that.
Okay, thanks, Stan. Ernie?
Yeah, the biggest concern I have is that our rules require that any walkways down to the beach be only 4 feet wide. This one is shown as 6 feet wide from the walkway. Once you hit that landscape, I don't know what you call it, the picture frame sort of decking, and then the stairs going down to the beach themselves are 6 feet. And you're going to have to bring those into force, I think, Dan.
I was working with the areas of concrete, so we matched that area. It came to me originally a lot bigger. The existing gap set up for the concrete going down is about 9 feet. And then I had pared it down to 6 just to match cover being removed to cover being put back. So they had a platform for their
Yeah, but the width of the existing walkway that's going down there is not 9 feet wide. It's sort of, what do you call it? It sort of scissors back and forth.
Goes back and
but
forth.
But the width
right?
of that is, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
right at the bank itself.
I think the actual width of the walkway is only about 2 or 3 feet or so. But regardless, our rules are that you have to be 4 feet. That's all I had, Brian.
Thanks, Tony. Let's see, John, you're up.
Yeah, okay, so I have similar reservations to what Mark and others have expressed, which is I'm concerned about that wall. I see the logic in putting some cobble and trying to replace some of the sand that's been washed out underneath the footing with some smaller stone and putting some cobble to break the waves. But the wall is already canted out maybe 10 degrees toward the water, and the soil in the planting bed behind it has washed away. And from the plans, it looks like part of the intent is to fill that area back in with soil. And my concern is that will increase the pressure on the wall, increase the chance that the wall would lean over further. And then if you've got a lot of new topsoil there, that's going to spill out on the existing beach and cause problems that we can't really anticipate. So I'm not sure about that. My other comment is just with regards to the natural heritage letter and their stated requirement that all the plantings be Barnstable County native, not just Massachusetts native, but Barnstable County native. And again, I don't know what force that has and to what extent we need to try to enforce that whole thing. But there are at least 2 items on the plant list here that are considered to be invasive, and that is the Vinca minor, the periwinkle, and there's euonymus there, both of which should not be planted there. I know when I visited the site, regardless of how strictly you want to take the requirement for all native, Vinca and euonymus should not be planted there. I couldn't identify euonymus there when I went there, but there is periwinkle growing in the bed now, and might be a little bit of a challenge to remove, but under the circumstances, we might consider requiring that any euonymus or periwinkle also be removed and not included in any future planting plan.
I think that to get to the idea of a fill in that area where it is dropping down, where it's the direct middle of the beach where there is the most undermining, that area from the bank side, a fine stone could be put down to stop or maybe even filter fabric and then a fine stone as part of the planting before putting that fill in. I think that is a strong point in the wall. So filling that back in, I think the removal of it is just the fact that that's probably the most eroded area of the wall. I think that is the strength of the wall because that's where that turn back is. So as for adding the extra, putting the soil back, I don't see that as creating more pressure than the wall can handle in that area. It certainly has been leaning over a long time, but I think the fact that it's been undermined, primarily 2 years ago, but last year the water was way up and this spring is looking just as wet and windy. As for the plantings, I think if Rocky's still on, he can certainly tell you what he saw and what he was planning on doing out there. Are you there, Rocky?
Yeah, I think I talked, Amy had emailed me and we switched over to a lot of native plant material, inkberry, high bush blueberry, low bush blueberry, and sweet fern, Carolina rose, and a lot of the other plants for color are in there primarily just to give it some sort of color during the summer season when they're going up and down the walkway. But in terms of that euonymus, that's an emerald gold euonymus. It's not the euonymus elatus that is the invasive euonymus. It's more of an ornamental, and I kept it in there just because we were talking about solidifying the grade so that we could have plant materials that did their work, that held the soil so that we didn't put pressure on the wall.
Well, if I could just follow up, my understanding is that specific species, Euonymus fortunei, is also considered to be invasive. And I think there could be other choices that are also ornamental that would also sucker and set roots and hold the bank back. I don't think you need to put an undesirable ornamental there. There are other choices.
I'd be happy to continue to work with them on the planting plan.
That's fine.
Thank you. Jim, I guess you're up.
Sure. Well, there's a few things going on here. I'm gonna just hold my comments to the planting. I'd be supportive of it being only native plants. I think as these projects come before us, even if there were some ornamentals there in the past, if the area is going to be disturbed, they should be in compliance with only native planting. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. You make my job easy. I agree with Jim's comments completely. I think we should not be encouraging ornamentals at that location in the 0 to 50. So I do support that concept. I support Ernie's concept on trying to keep that walkway to 4 feet. And Dan, if you could, when you come back, maybe make calculations on, what's proposed and what's there in terms of square footage. And so we can evaluate the proposed differences.
Up in the page 2 on the upper left corner, I just have a quick breakdown of that. Showing that we're just under what's there, and that's with that 6 foot wide. And if we make the steps 4 foot, is it still using that same coverage? Can we still have the 6 foot platform up top and then go to a 4 foot steps on the way down? Would that be acceptable? Then we'd be even under less coverage. And the coverage is quite a bit different in that one's concrete on the ground. We're looking at being, a wood frame structure above the ground. So right. I would think it would be a more positive thing and less coverage, but it would give them that.
Okay. And so I think you've got a lot of information to work with. And I didn't get down to the site. Is the site occupied now? Is this something that can go in the next week or two?
It has not been occupied, Rocky. Are the owners coming down anytime soon?
I don't think soon. I think that they're hoping we can get this thing done by the summer, but they come in the summer.
Okay, then I'll pay a visit in the next week or so. And let's see, any further thoughts to send these guys off on for revisions?
I just have a quick comment. Dan kind of asked about the width. Typically it's walkways and staircases, Dan, of the 4 foot width. But I think the commission can also take into consideration existing square footage of hardscape versus proposed as well. But standard condition is 4 foot walkway, 4 foot stairs.
I was just wondering if where it's a good chunk of that, the lower part at least, is just like a concrete pad, taking that area versus a raised platform if the owners could utilize that coverage. So, swapping it that way. And at that lower area, I believe it is the full 9 feet wide in between those two walls. But if we had 4 foot there, but up higher up had was 6 foot wide, give an overview. That would be
yeah, but Dan, you say it's 9 feet wide, but the walkway itself is not 9 feet wide, the existing walkway. It's just that it's a switchback, so it goes back and forth. And, it goes 9 feet perhaps side to side, but the walkway itself is not 9 feet wide.
Correct, on the way down, but when you get right to the bottom, it's probably 9 by 3. This kind of, maybe even more than that, I guess it's.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that sort of as the final back and forth of the walkway itself. It's still 3 feet wide, that it goes 9 feet long.
Okay. Well, Rocky and I will discuss that, but sounds like the commission overall is fairly positive for what needs to be done. And we can go over the plantings and walkway size, and then Rocky, do you have any other questions?
No, I think we can. I'll talk to Amy about the plantings, and we'll look at the project as a whole. Okay.
All right, thanks. And Dan, I just say that I think, you're hearing some strong interest to naturalize that bank as much as possible. So I think that's pretty important in the sense of having that native plants. And we haven't heard much about alterations to the lawn. And so I don't know if that would come into play, but that could be an option if necessary, is to reduce some of that edge of lawn if necessary.
Okay.
I'm sorry. What about the lawn? Reduce the size of the lawn?
Well,
is that what you said?
Yeah, you've got lawn right now in 0 to 50, and often projects like this, we're looking for ways to reduce that. And if there are, if it's necessary to, trade off certain resource impacts, that can be an option in many cases.
Well, hoping that overall, especially if we're reducing walkway size, that it's even as presented is it's a mitigation as a reduction. So hopefully we'll be able to cover just in our work area, and then the replanting that Rocky had to do, and he had come out with his original plan of the plantings and then made the changes. Had no issue with making the changes that Amy had requested. And I'm sure he'll be open to changes that the commission's recommending, and then working with Amy on coming up with species that will thrive in that area and hopefully stabilize things.
It sounds like it's. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there might be a little miscommunication in that I did draw a second plan dated April 1 that did make changes from the original drawing, the colored drawing that you're looking at, and it has been changed. And if working with Amy, the idea of the, I'm totally one who believes that reducing the size of the lawn would be a good idea, but I need to run that by the customers.
Sure. Now, I don't have the updated landscaping plan. Does that show any ornamentals? Is it all native plants?
It's a mix. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's primarily what Amy emailed to me was we made substitutions and it's primarily things that do grow natively on that shoreline. Inkberry, blueberry, found sweet fern. I have some things, Carolina rose, some sedums, which are and coralberry and the other thing, serviceberry and winterberry. Those are all things that grow right there. I mean, you can see them growing just to either side.
Yeah, sorry, you didn't get that plan in your Dropbox. I didn't have a minute. I got it yesterday. I didn't have a chance to scan and send it in. I figured we'd just talk about it tonight, knowing that we weren't closing anyways. And then I saw the comment that just came in this morning from Heritage about completely natural. So again, I didn't rush to include it this morning in your packets, knowing that there's probably going to be additional changes to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as long as the takeaway message is that, quite a few members are interested in seeing all native plants on that bank.
Yeah. Which I think if you grab that plan, the April 1 plan, you'll see that there are a lot of changes and a lot of them have to do with native plants.
Okay. When would you like to come back?
We'd like to the next hearing if possible, and then if we can get to square it away with natural heritage by then. But I know the applicant is certainly hoping to be able to build the steps to be able to access the pond safely. So if we could just be extended till the next hearing, and then I will notify the commission if we're not, if we're not made enough progress with natural heritage by then, and we'll continue before the meeting. Well, before.
All right, any additional comments? Comments from the audience? Well, then I move that we continue the hearing for the notice of intent for 220 Long Pond Drive until April 15th, 2020.
I second it.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have the notice of intent for 31 Mill Road, map 15, parcel U3, proposal to remove and replace the existing dwelling in hardscape. Is there a representative here for the proponent?
Yes, Dan Croto from Moran Engineering, Kathy DeMeyer from Encore Construction. It looks as though the owner also is maybe available if questions are needed. So this is 31 Mill Road, beautiful piece of property, and they're looking to put a beautiful house in place of the existing the accession department has is a 1949 house. I don't know if you know more of the age, Kathy, but 1949 9-bedroom based on the previous or fairly recent septic plan. And I believe the owner and Encore are proposing a 6-bedroom, 6 or 7 bedrooms, so a reduction in bedroom and a reduction in square footage of the house of about 218 square feet. So what I submitted to the commission was the existing condition plan and then proposed condition plan with the house overlaid. The existing house is a sprawling, many different sections to it. The new house is a more standard layout house. So the idea was to keep all the coverages under what previously is there, maintaining the property, maintaining the existing patio down below, and utilizing that more coming out from the first floor of the house. What it is with this project, there's a flood zone limit strictly by DEP 92.1, and elevation run is just under or just over that 10-to-1 slope. So even though this is lawn in this area and it's been a lawn for a long time, it does meet the 92.1 strictly definition. So regulatory wise would be considered coastal bank. It's obviously not a sediment source, but it could be considered storm protection. So we took that number or that flood zone limit and offset that to 50 and the 100 and make sure that the location of the house kept the coverages to what's existing or under what's existing. I did have contact with the neighbor to the south, who's also a recent new owner, and they who would be the one who would be more of a zoning board of appeals thing, but the one impacted by this, and they saw it as a very tasteful addition to the property. So the idea is to remove a 1949 house that's obviously meets no building codes, isn't safe in a hurricane, would impact the neighborhood if there was a major hurricane and if this water came up to this flood zone shown on the plan, and it actually was used as a flood storage or flood barrier. The current house is not properly tied to the foundation, does not meet any of the current building codes. Putting this house in its place environmentally and for safety, it would be a huge improvement for the owners in the neighborhood. The existing septic was just put in 2016. It's for 9 bedrooms, more than adequate for the current structure. Because the tank, there's a tank and pump chamber down on the lower part of the house. The original, before this 2016, there were cesspools heading right down to that, near that coastal bank, what's delineated as coastal bank or the floodplain limit. That was changed again in 2016, but to catch the pipes out of the house, there's a septic tank and a pump chamber right down near that floodplain limit. Those in the new, one advantage to this new construction is those would be removed and a new tank put in outside the 100-foot setback. We see no reason that it would need to go to Board of Health. It meets all their regulations as far as we can tell. And we see no reason why it would need to go to Zoning Board of Appeals. It meets the zoning coverages. With that, I will ask if Kathy has anything to add.
No, I think you've covered everything, Dan.
Okay, so we are here for comments and questions.
Thank you. Amy, do you have a summary for us?
Sure. So there's a couple of resource areas here. There obviously is salt marsh. There's a little bit of a bordering vegetative wetland to the salt marsh. And then you have quite a bit of a ways up, you have the flood zone. And because of the steepness of slope and elevations, the regulatory wetland, if you will, is the flood zone, which is your de facto coastal bank. But I think it deserves mentioning that the work that is proposed from an actual wetland, meaning bordering vegetative wetland here, is about 100 feet away. So by default, this house is within the 50 and 100-foot buffer zone to the top of coastal bank because that's where floodplain is. But a true wetland, if you will, is quite a bit farther away. There is a reduction. So I should say no mitigation is being proposed because there's an overall decrease in building and hardscape in our jurisdiction of 625 square feet. There is a decrease specifically in the 0 to 50 of 18 square feet. And there's an increase in structure of 215 in the 50 to 100, but a decrease in hardscape in that same zone of 822. So building, the house itself, structures such as patios, that's what they mean there. So there is a 625-foot overall square foot decrease. I do recommend that they have to abide by your no chemical application and that any reseeding be done with a native seed mix. I think that alone will provide a big improvement to this property and to the waterway that it abuts, because there is a substantial lawn area there. But because they are having a net decrease, I don't see the requirement coming in for mitigation there. So I would recommend approval. We do have a DEP number now with all your standard conditions, roof runoff, taking care of that. Obviously the chemical application conditions, the seeding conditions. But overall, I do see this as an improvement over existing conditions on the site.
Thank you, Amy. Let's start with Mark. Comments?
I really don't have any particular concerns about this. I agree with everything Amy said.
Thank you. Stan?
Same here. I'm all set.
Yeah. Carolyn?
Sorry. I'm okay too. I agree with everything. It surprised me that this was actually in a flood zone. I'm assuming it's in a flood zone from the channel, from the harbor?
Yes, Nantucket Sound flooding zone. Yep. Which will go all the way up to Grassy Pond, goes right through, right through Cold Brook and all the way up to Grassy Pond. I think that's Cold Brook there.
Mm-hmm.
We're in big trouble if this is flooded.
Agreed. But,
Yeah, agreed.
100 years is the prediction.
I'm fine with everything. Thank you.
Okay, John.
Yeah, just one question. I just want to verify that I assume that the hardscape in the 0 to 50 that's noted as no change in area, that's this existing patio to the south of the old and the new structures there, and that's the hardscape, and there are no changes contemplated to any of that. Is that correct?
No changes in number. If you look on the existing conditions plan, I know no changes in square footage. If you look on the existing conditions plan, the current parking goes all the way to the edge of the existing house, and so there's quite a bit of parking that's being removed. So,
right, but on the south side of the house where there's a patio, that's all just going to remain the same.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty close, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
Yep, I'm all set with this one. Just make sure I get the compliance on the lawn regulations. That's all.
Okay. All right, I just have one question for Amy on her judgment. So the hardscape, that was in the 52-100. Is it really, basically a good trade-off? Are we trading off similar types of hardscape?
I think so. A lot of what's there now is, paved areas and impervious surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
So I think though there is technically an increase in structure in the 50 to 100, the decrease in hardscape, which really is hard, of 822 far offsets that, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, that's what I didn't make it to the site, so that was something I was curious about.
Yeah, if I could just add that the hardscape itself, it's not like a pervious patio. It's the existing hardscape. It's actual pavement and then concrete patio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Any comments from the audience? Any other conditions that commissioners can think of beyond what we've already discussed? Okay, we have no reason to continue this one. We have a DP number. It just came in. Okay, well, if somebody would like to make a motion on the project, that would be appreciated.
I'll make a motion to approve the notice of intent for 31 Mill Road. And just noting to include the normal restrictions on chemical applications.
I'll second.
Of any sort on the 0 to 100.
Okay, seconded by Carolyn.
That is from the 0-100. It's a little ambiguous actually here because there's a 0-100 from the bordering vegetated wetland, and there's a 0 to 100 from the top of coastal bank. And I would like to just ensure that what we're actually doing is including both of those areas in the restriction on chemicals and fertilizers on lawn and beds.
We'll say that it's with any area within Conservation Commission jurisdiction, and I'll elaborate on that.
Okay, great.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, the motion has been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Okay, we have just one item left on the main agenda, and that's for 177 Forest Street, map 31, parcel C2, a proposal for additions and renovations. They're seeking a 3-year extension to the permit we issued previously. Do we have the proponent represented?
I am on the line.
And what is your name?
Steve Safran, the name on the list here.
Well, we ask everyone to identify themselves.
Perfect.
Okay, do you want to describe what you have in mind?
Well, essentially, I need extra time to get the rest of my work done. I've had some medical issues and financial issues. I'm doing most of the work myself. I still need to submit and get approval of the hardscape plan from the commission, and that's going to take a little while to do. What's going to take time also is a lot of the stone that I have from the buildings. I need to construct, well, you'll see it in the hardscape plan, but I'm going to need that amount of time to get everything done.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have any summary comments on this for us?
Sure. I met Mr. Safran out on the site, and I think first I would like to hear a little bit of comment about just what exactly on the exterior of the project needs to still be finished, not counting the walls and hardscape you want to do on the outside, but in terms of the actual addition and work on what was originally permitted, how much more do you have to do?
Well, I changed a window to a door on the new addition, so it's putting a landing and a stairway down to the land. And then on the south side, I'm putting up a, let's see, a deck. And I've got to put that in the plan and also get that done. I don't have very much at all, except, the hardscape is going to be the main thing.
Okay, so from the original proposal, the structural work is essentially done.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, when you look at what remains to be done versus what's already been done, it's a very, very small amount, yes.
Okay, so I met Mr. Safran on the site, and I did notice that, some walls had started to be constructed out of some of the stone he had left over. And that was within the 50 to 100 foot buffer zone. I instructed him to stop doing that. Also noticed that there was a door that he alluded to on the back of the house, which is the east side, which is several feet in the air. So, you know, asked how you get down. You said stairs. So this is all work that we haven't approved yet. And you did start on that with the walls. That's technically in violation. I can't recommend a 3-year extension for you. And at this point, at this point, your permit, it's not expired because we're still talking about it. It expired on March 23rd. However, you got your request in ahead of time, so you're still good, like as of right now. So I'm a little bit unsure about how to proceed in the, going forward, because we have had a few issues with this property. And I'm unsure if the commission wants to grant maybe a 1-year extension. You know, we haven't been getting the monthly logs we were supposed to be getting. You did do the plantings. I'd be interested in seeing how they made it through the winter and the rabbits and whatnot. But, you know, you did the 1,000 square feet of plantings that you had to do, but you still have additional 224 square feet of plantings you have to do, which was for the original permit. So I'm not comfortable with recommending a 3-year extension for you. At this time, I think we need to, yeah, I'll be quiet for now.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Let's ask for comments from the commissioners. Ernie, you're up.
Yeah, Mr. Saffron, do you have an idea how long it'll actually take to complete this work?
I think it's going to take a couple of years. We talked about the hardscape also. Or is it just the stair?
Yeah,
that's going.
Everything that would be subject to our approval is what we're looking for. I mean, the insides of the buildings obviously are something that you don't need us for.
Right.
So it's all of the external.
Yeah, it's going to take me over a year, I feel. I have someone helping me, but he's a landscaper. So once that season starts, he'll be able to help me very limited. And it's mainly the hardscape that's the real extension for. I mean, part of it is I have to move around some of the stones from the small barn foundation and the large barn foundation. So that's part of the whole thing too. So I need to get that moved and done with what I want, which will be part of the hardscape plan.
All right. I mean, it's a little bit frustrating for me that you know, work is still being done here and being done outside of what was permitted, and the monthly progress reports that were required aren't getting submitted and that sort of thing. So, I mean, there is some frustration, certainly from my end, and I'm sure some of the other commissioners would share that, but I have no other questions.
Thanks, Ernie. Stan?
I have a question. Once I get the hardscape plan in for review and it's approved, would I then be able to say, okay, it's going to take me this amount of time to do the hardscape? And that would be an extension beyond the 1 year Amy suggests, or at least a 2-year I'm looking for.
Leave that up to Amy, I think.
I don't think we can comment on a proposal we haven't seen yet. If you get something approved from the Conservation Commission, we can discuss at that time if we were to grant you further extension from this. So this is your second extension request right now.
That's correct.
Okay, Stan?
Yeah, as Ernie said, I'm very frustrated too. I've seen this property and been there a number of times. A lot of problems getting the work done that's supposed to get done. and continue to do other things that shouldn't be done, like another new wall here, which by now you should know that that shouldn't have been done without permission. Even the mitigation that you finally did, the 1,000 square feet, was pulling teeth to get that done. And now we're not getting reports on that. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not willing to do any extension. I'm done.
All right, thank you, Stan. Let's see, Mark, you're up next.
I'd like to see a prepared heightscape plan for the remainder of the project with no more addendums, just a final plan with all the details, and then go from there.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn.
I agree with Mark. I'd like to see a final plan, and I'd like it's a little frustrating on this project. It seems we've been doing this forever. I think we need to see the final plan you want. We need to see monthly updates on the plantings that you were talking about. You need to comply. And when we see some evidence of complying, I would be willing to grant some sort of an extension. But I need to see a little more evidence of complying. I mean, monthly reports are pretty easy to do, even with shortage of help and some health problems.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
If you want to see a revised plan showing hardscape, you can't act on that under the current form that you're under an extension permit. It has to be an amendment. You can't, it's probably not going to be just as simple as a change in plan, but we had closed the hearing for the notice of intent and issued the order of conditions. So right now, this is not an open hearing. So you can't approve a new plan as an extension. It would have to be an amendment.
Thank you, Amy. That's very helpful. Okay, John, do you want to finish up comments?
Yeah, so what are our options here? I mean, if we deny the extension and you've already issued a stop work, is that right, Amy?
He's been told to stop work. I haven't physically issued paperwork. He was told when I visited the site that he had to stop the work. And we had to talk about it this meeting.
So if we
was that done?
Yes.
If we were to
no work on your property at all?
No work, I'm sorry?
A couple of days ago, and I saw people working out in the yard. I don't know what they were doing.
I told him no work on the walls, on anything that was in violation of the order. I didn't tell him he had to stop work totally on his property, just on what was in violation.
Okay, thanks, Amy.
But if we were to issue a denial, is that effectively a stop work as well? You can't do it?
It would require filing of a brand new notice of intent.
So, okay, that's what I was getting to. So that is an option then, just issue a denial and tell the applicant that he has to refile, start again with the filing process. And part of that action might or might not be a fine, right? I mean, there is violation there that what did you say? Did you say you had issued a fine or you?
I have not. That's up to the commission for the work that was started without permit. My recommendation is you do issue some sort of extension, could even be a couple more months to start getting back on track again. I don't see the benefit necessarily in refiling a brand new notice of intent at this point. That's just my thought.
So the quandary for the commission is there appears anyway to be a lack of good faith here. That is, the commission has attempted to work with the applicant, and the applicant has failed on numerous occasions to follow through on the commitments they made to the commission. So then the quandary for the commission is, how do we deal with that? Do we just give him another chance and wait until he fails again to follow through on commitments he makes? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And I don't know if taking a harder stand and just saying, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to do this anymore. You want to continue working on that place. You've got to stop working, refile, and find a way to give us more confidence that you're actually going to do what we ask you to do. I mean, it is, people have problems, people have health problems, that's all understandable, but still, the applicant should be making commitments that he can follow through, so we get some confidence that he's going to do what he tells us he's going to do. At this point, I'm not sure how we do that. And I'm not sure just giving, I mean, what happens in 2 months? We give them 2 months to get back on track, and then what?
I had sent Amy monthly statuses when there was work being done. And when I stopped doing my statuses when essentially I wasn't able to do any work. I talked to Amy and she said, no, you should send them to me saying there's been no activity. And that it just
recently there has been activity because you've been building the walls.
Well, the wall itself, just to put it in perspective, it was edging around the driveway. There's like 8 stones there that are, it's not really a wall, it's more of a boundary. That's all. I agree. It was a hardscape that's in your jurisdiction, but it was not, my intent was not to do it ignoring you or the commission.
But you did. That's the problem. You did ignore the commission. You did fail to inform Amy. It shouldn't be a hardship to just send in an email and say,
it is not a hardship. It is not a hardship.
So what do you think the commission, what can you do to give us some confidence that when you tell us you're going to do something, it actually gets done, and that you are going to inform us when you go outside of plans? We have no confidence in that at this point.
I have to, when I submit the new notice of intent, that's when I would restart the monthly. I can't do anything now. I would restart the monthly statuses, and I would be submitting a hardscape plan.
Jim, do you have I forgot you earlier.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my comments are, I believe we should issue a fine for the walls for $300 and just not issue any more extensions at this time. There's been an extension. There's already been multiple extensions, I believe. And just, let them come back when they're ready. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. So I'll weigh in. I'm interested in seeing this meeting end before long. And I do think a $300 fine for the wall without permit is justifiable. And I would like to see the hardscape plan, the amendments. So I guess I'm in favor of an extension just to move that along. I think a new notice of intent could just grind out for a long time. So that's what I'm suggesting, but I think, I think somebody could make a motion and we could vote on it. It's, I just don't want to have this drawn out too long tonight. We've discussed it in fair detail.
Brad, are you thinking 3-year extension or 1 year or 2 year?
Well, I would say 6 months or 1 year. And that's, honestly, that's for what we've experienced, that's, giving a lot, I feel. But I also think that a new notice of intent could push this process off longer. We all want this to conclude.
I agree with that.
And there'll be a lot of scrutiny to the amendment as well as the hardscape plan. Any thoughts, Amy, on what the best way to go with this is? It's, you know, you've heard everybody.
Yeah, I see where everyone is coming from, and I see the argument for not allowing an extension and having to file a new notice of intent. I do think, though, I think that is just going to prolong things more. So I would be in favor, I would recommend a 6-month or a year extension with the fine and the monthly log and have to, yeah, I mean, within that time, I don't know, we can't make Mr. Safran come in at any specific time necessarily for his rest of his hardscape plan necessarily, because he gets his, however, sooner rather than later would be really good, because we can't guarantee that there's going to be an extension passed. And we also don't know under an amendment, because we haven't seen the hardscape plan, if it's going to be suitable as an amendment or if it would have to be a new application itself. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I say something?
I have the hardscape plan. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's right.
I have the hardscape plan essentially complete, so I can submit it for review pretty quickly.
Carol, do you have a comment?
In favor of a 1-year extension, and I am giving more leeway than I would normally do based on the physical situation that we find all of us in right now, that it might be a little bit harder in the next couple of weeks to find someone to help them do some of this work. And I would be in favor of the 1 year.
Okay, thanks, Carol. How do folks feel about having an extension that ends this calendar year so that we don't carry over until next spring? You know, you've got the summer, you have the fall to do work, and then that's the end of it. Does that make sense, or is that just, you know, cutting things too closely? You know, have a 10-month extension or an 8-month extension to give him the summer and fall.
I would prefer to just go with the 1 year, Brett.
Okay, that's fine. I just hope we're not doing this again a year from now. Okay, well, I'm going to move that we approve a request for a 1-year extension for 177 Forest Street, and also to fine the property $300 for the work done on the wall without a permit, and then ask that the owner provides the hardscape plan as soon as possible, and as well as monthly reporting once work continues on the site.
I'll second.
Okay, so Carolyn seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I've got a question. If you vote one way or the other, where's the fine stand?
Well, if the motion fails, we're gonna try for something else, and I'm pretty sure that something else might include a fine. So, you know, I mean, here's an opportunity where if somebody disagrees, they can, you know, ask to reconsider the motion, and they might want to submit something on their own. But I just want to move things along.
I would suggest that since the monthly reports were part of the original order of conditions, that the failure to submit the monthly reports would also be subject to a future $300 fine as well, just to make sure we get those going forward. But that's just more for informational purposes than anything else.
Okay, so not a fine for the lack of submitting prior, but in the future, you don't receive them.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that can be a condition. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed, say nay.
No.
No.
All right, so I think we're, okay, so I'll do a roll call. So Brad Chase, I voted in support. Ernie?
I vote yes.
Okay, Jim?
I voted no.
Okay, Dan?
I voted no.
Okay. Excuse me, Mark?
I vote yes.
Okay, Carolyn?
Yes.
And then John?
No.
Okay, so the motion is approved 4-3. So we would ask you to, work with Amy to try to get that hardscape plan going and your amendment and start submitting monthly plans as soon as you start work up and as well as the fine.
Brad, can I ask, even if work is not started up, if I could just get a quick email saying no work's been done this month? That way, just for our records, it's very clear.
Mm-hmm. Is that acceptable, Mr. Saffron?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for hanging in there this late. And I think that concludes that hearing. All right, so we're on to other items. What do you want to tackle first, Amy?
I actually don't have much. I put a couple things on as placeholders just in case I had more information from you. Like, we don't need to do an executive session tonight. We will need to do one on the 15th. But for, just to let you know, the violations went out for 51 Dunes and 39 Prince Charles. And then we can do the minutes first if you want, and then I have a couple of just questions for you before we end up tonight.
Okay.
So if you want to do, I think we have minutes for you.
You have an item before that, Amy, on Shady Drive.
Oh, I'm sorry. I took that off my agenda or my site summary. I spoke with the owners today and they would like to be heard on the 15th instead because they want to their landscaper to be able to participate in that discussion. And I thought that 2 weeks isn't going to hurt that.
So we're doing, which minutes are we tackling?
August 21st, I think. Hold on.
I don't see it in the Dropbox. There's March 18th.
Oh, it was, you know what, that was carried over from another meeting. We may have already done that one. But yes, March 18th, please.
Oh, no, it's there. It's up at
There,
the
I
top.
saw it.
Yeah, it's up at the top.
I don't have copies of them in front of me, so just whatever edits you make sure you're clear with stating where they are, and we'll go back in the minutes and make the changes. I got too many windows open here right now. I don't want to try to do it simultaneously.
I was there on August 21st, so I'm going to abstain.
I thought we were doing March 18.
No,
I have no comments on the March one.
I have no comments.
Just so you know, Amy, you've been awful still or your camera froze for the last half hour.
Can you see me now?
Oh, I see you. You're just not moving.
Oh.
At least not in mine.
I don't see you.
I'm moving.
No, not my end.
Well, that's good to know, because, you know, we were worried, maybe.
As long as you can hear me, we're good.
I think she's left the building.
Uh,
Yeah, you're taking your dog for a walk right now, right?
Not in this weather. If you don't have, I mean, you could do one motion for both sets of minutes if you like both of them how they are.
Yeah, I had no comments on either one.
All right, well, if someone would like to make a motion on both at once, that'd be great.
I move we approve the minutes for August 21st and March 18th.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
All right.
Right.
I got two little things for you. Well, one's kind of a big thing. So the east end of Red River Beach is looking pretty bad. And I can only imagine the damage this storm is going to do to it. So I haven't shown it to you yet. I've come up with a revised idea sketch plan for the return that the commission permitted that Natural Heritage has been has essentially not approved. And it's an idea of less of a wall per se and more just toe stones potentially with a softer end to it. I don't know how they're going to feel about it. I haven't been able to work with the town engineer yet on revising that plan. I was trying to come up with something that might allow us to protect that a little bit better. Right now, the filter fabric that I had installed with an emergency certification about 7 years ago is now completely exposed and ripping, and all the sediment is gone. So it is an emergency situation again, and the commission had instructed me not to have highway put any more sand over the top of it to stave off the erosion there, and I agree with that. I wanted to see if there were any emergency measures that we could do that you would permit in the meantime, because I do fear that very soon that end it's getting bad, put it that way. It's a safety hazard as well as it'll eventually get to the point where it will undermine the parking area if it gets rid of that filter fabric.
Yeah. Amy, was it Natural Heritage or DEP that told us that it didn't allow us to move forward?
It was actually both that put the stall on it, and they have been asking me, are there revisions? They haven't come out and said we're denying it, because we haven't issued a final, we can't issue the order. As soon as we issue the order, my feeling was that they were going to actually deny it. But I've been trying to get some feedback, and it's been very difficult. So, and I will say part of it has been on my end as well. There's just so much going on, but we are, I do have an idea for more of a toe stone feature, potentially with a fiber envelope or something on top of it, something that's a little bit softer than what we had approved. But I just haven't had a chance to put that on paper yet to get in front of you. But I wanted to see in the meantime if there would be anything that you would permit. I mean, it may be a one more time addition of sand. I don't love that either. You can't really do anything hard because as an emergency.
We couldn't put in some boulders, just, temporary, put some boulders in there.
I think that would raise a lot of questions with DEP.
Yeah, I feel like the sand's been really a degrading.
I do too.
I really think it's not responsible for us to say, let's put more sand there, but we don't want to lose any structure. I don't know why we couldn't just put a few boulders in and say, hey, DEP, we had to save that, because if you resubmit something, it's going to take a while.
I know.
How do folks feel?
I have two questions and a point, actually. One is that I'm not sure, since currently the original plan is funded out of CPC funds, so I'm not sure what happens if you change the plan substantially or do something ad hoc like you're suggesting, Brad. I'm just not sure. I would have to think about how that affects the CPC funding. Or maybe if you're just tossing in a few boulders, maybe that's not funded by CPC. Maybe that's the town just doing something out of general funds, although that seems kind of unlikely at this point. So
well, we have boulders.
Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing is, I might have asked this before and the answer might just be no, 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 but is there any way of just moving sand as opposed to trucking sand in, taking some of the sand that is now changing the channel and shoaling the area to the east of the jetty? Is there any way that the sand berm on the north side of that could be filled in some by taking some of the sand that's already there and it's been washed down? And before you answer that question, my other question is, if nothing is done, then it seems like the end of the parking lot, as you say, Amy, will start to get undermined. And then something has to be done about that. That wouldn't be able to just be allowed to proceed just and run its natural course, right? And then the town would want to be, the other thing would be to just shorten the parking lot on that end. But that would require a whole set of other permits and actions, right? And what does DEP and Natural Heritage think about that? I mean, if they don't like doing a return on the jetty that was originally proposed, they're not going to like any of the other things that would end up having to be done.
Oh, I can think of a thing that they would like. It's what they did at Paynes Creek over in Brewster, essentially as retreat. They had a very similar problem at the end of the creek, and they had a asphalt area that was undermined, and Brewster ended up retreating and removing the asphalt and having to relocate parking and everything else. So because it's not a pre-78 dwelling, it gets a little, it's a little bit hairy with DEP. So your answer about essentially dredging is that would be a different application and we can pursue that. But we can't just go and dig sand and put it back up. But I do like that idea, but that wouldn't be a short-term solution. But I do potentially like that as an option if DEP says no for all structures. The problem there is it has become somewhat habitat. It has, and it would just wash right back in. It would take a little time, but it would wash right back in. So DEP, it's interesting. In some cases, they've allowed these returns to be put on when it's a coastal bank. The problem here is it's not really a coastal bank and it's not really a dune. I mean, it's consolidated material, it's beach, it's bank sand that's been put on there. It is a vertical buffer. It's hard to characterize that particular landform at that spot. And that's why DEP is balking at any structure, is because they're viewing it as a dune. And I see that, but I also see where it could be coastal bank in that specific spot. So, but I think, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, can I ask you to maybe put this on the agenda for the next meeting and have people come in with ideas and maybe get this on a site visit? I mean, can we still do site visits as a group or no?
Well, we could take our own cars. I've been instructed I really shouldn't be doing site visits, but.
Yeah. My feeling is that this has been a very long meeting. I'd love to conclude it. And I think if we could get caught up on this for quite a while without coming to an end.
All right, I just wanted to bring it up. I noticed how bad it's been getting, and
yeah, well, I think if we can all get down there individually maybe and take a look at it and think about it, I think the dredging concept will be problematic from a permitting standpoint.
it would take a long time. It's certainly not a short-term solution.
I don't know if this commission would really want to approve that or not. I like the tow idea. I think we have to find a way to convince folks that it's the right thing to do. And so maybe it's revisiting a new proposal. But yeah, I mean, if someone has something pressing they want to say, please go ahead. But otherwise, I really want to wrap this up. I think this format it's kind of hard to carry on for 4 hours. And I hope, you all agree with me. Any comments on this?
I got one question. Where's the break in maintaining a beach and continuing to fill or protect the parking lot? Would it be considered beach maintenance to open the end of that channel, take that surplus material that's washed down and push it back up towards the end of the parking lot in a long taper, hoping that some of the wave deflection would be absorbed? It's never going to be a permanent solution, but it's a...
Yeah, I think you talk about subtidal habitats, so I think it would be dredging.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so it would come with all that permitting load and scrutiny, including our scrutiny for impacts to habitats. So I don't often say this, I think it needs a hard solution there.
Yeah.
And you can protect structures that were built before 78. I would think a really important beach parking lot like this, should qualify as well. If they really want us to retreat, then we have to know that, and maybe that's what happens. But I think
put that for next time.
Yeah, I think we support you moving forward, maybe a new proposal. And who would be the contact at DP?
I don't remember the name off the top of my head. I can get it to you.
Okay.
Amy, can you send me a quick summary of what happened at Paynes Creek?
Sure.
Not tonight, but just a quick summary.
No, it's going to be tonight. But yes, I can do that.
Okay.
And then I have one other quick question for you. This one is quick, if we're done with this one for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
So our next meeting is April 15th. I don't know and that's a Wednesday. I don't know yet if the selectmen are going to be wanting to meet again on that day. So if that's the case, then we have one of two things. We could either try to meet earlier in the day on Wednesday online, or we'd have to bump again to Thursday. I know these are like uncertain times right now, and normally it wouldn't be a possibility, but would people be able to work on Wednesday night so we don't have to do what we did this week, or would you just prefer to do it Thursday?
You mean Wednesday afternoon?
Wednesday afternoon. Well, right. I'm giving you two options. I'm saying we're meeting on the 15th. So can you meet earlier on the 15th, say early to mid-afternoon on Wednesday the 15th? Or if the selectmen are meeting at 6:30 that night, are we just going to move to Thursday again?
I'm okay either way.
I'm fine either way too.
Same here.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm really having a hard time. We're doing a lot of work Monday through Wednesday, and so I probably couldn't make the Wednesday. So, but I wouldn't have a problem having the meeting occur without me. You've got a quorum, or have it Thursday.
Okay, we'd have to do, I don't really care either way. I'm just trying, if we did it on Wednesday, we wouldn't have to do what we did last night by having to sign in and continue everything for a day. Which wasn't a huge deal, but you know, it's a little extra.
What does the agenda look like?
Huh?
What does the agenda look like for next
Not as
meeting?
bad as this time.
Good.
Why not preempt it and just schedule it for the 16th instead?
Because, actually no, we can't because we continued tonight to the 15th. On recording tonight, we continued things to the 15th.
Oh,
Okay.
So we can't. We either have to meet on the 15th to have the meeting, or we have to meet on the 15th to continue everything to the 16th.
Oh, boy.
All right, well, either way is fine with me, whatever you want to do.
All right. Let me look at see what we have, and I'll let you know. Okay?
What time would the selectmen begin on Wednesday?
6:30.
6:30, yeah. I mean, I wish we could just meet for an hour. It's tough. I think this format, I don't like it. I just think it's hard to really function. It seems like we're doing fairly well with it.
You did a great job.
Yeah, it seems like we're doing pretty well, but I don't think it's optimal.
It's not optimal.
Yeah.
But look at it this way. We're getting projects, either, you know, we're discussing them and we're helping a little bit with, you know, the economy while they still can work with the things that we do approve that are approvable. We're trying to help things keep going. So a lot of towns are putting things off a lot more. And I think we should be proud that we're trying to keep things running as smoothly as possible under these crazy circumstances. So.
Yeah, I would just say let's try to keep these meetings to, you know, a reasonable time period so we don't really get burnt out with all this. I have talked to a few other commissions and yeah, there's a bunch that are just not meeting.
Yeah.
But they're concerned about what does that mean for, you know, the town or DEP's regulations, but there are definitely some towns that aren't meeting right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else, folks?
Nope.
No. All right, well, thank you all very much. I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Good night, everyone.